Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the 12th live stream from the Misfit Gamer Studios. I'm your host, Vortex, and this is D&D Discussions. Today, we're going to go something a little bit new again, something just a little bit different, trying a few new things out. Plus, I'm kind of out of ideas right now on very specific topics I want to talk about. Been pretty hectic at work recently, so we're going to just kind of coast today a little bit, but join me because we are going to be exploring something that I haven't really dipped into in a while. Excuse me. So this today, hey Bobakiss, what's up? How you doing? Nice to see you. Appreciate it. Oh, spoilers, not yet. We're not looking at that yet. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. We are going to explore an old Discord that I was running. I was running a D&D Discord, a whole campaign, mostly via text, and then we would just hop in chat and do some voice gaming a little bit here and there. But for the most part, it was done mostly in Discord using one of my favorite D&D bots. Now, this particular server is about 3 years old, at least in terms of when we were last gaming. So it's going to be a little interesting because I haven't dove into this one in a very long time. So I'm really interested to see what I had come up with back then, talk a little bit about what we were doing, why the whole thing was made, and then we'll just kind of go through what I created and hopefully give you guys some ideas on how to maybe run yours or just, some ways that you can spice yours up. And I'm definitely going to have some fun critiquing this because this is, like I said, this was back in 2020. So, middle pandemic, and we were just kind of doing our thing. So let's kind of dive into it. All right. Here we go. All right. So this was actually a lot of fun for me to build. So I had a friend of mine from New Zealand reach out, and they just wanted to play a game. They wanted to kind of have their try with me as a DM. So, of course, I was going to jump at the opportunity, and I wanted to come up with something brand new. I didn't want to just run them through. I didn't want to try to add them into anything because I knew that their time frame, our time frame was going to be a lot different. So I wanted something that was going to be a lot more tangible, a lot more easy to get to than just always having to be in a voice channel. So I decided to dedicate an entire server to it, and I wanted to take a lot of the things that I had learned from gaming in Discords, and I wanted to alter what I had seen and provide my spin on it, something that would work with High Point, but also provide an opportunity to game essentially whenever the players wanted to. Because one of the things that I've noticed, I think that just everybody has a problem with, is obviously game time with parties that are larger than like 3 people, including the DM, and trying to get everybody coordinated is difficult, and I know a lot of people have a hard time with the idea of gaming without the group. Now, this is something that I try to do as often as I can if the opportunity arises. Like if I only have one person gaming and they're kind of stuck with a party, especially if they don't have another character yet or they don't want to solo game that particular character. Sometimes it can be hard. Sometimes you can slip in like dream sequences are always a good way to do things. Or, do like a callback to something else, kind of do a past bit with their character to kind of do some building. So I always try to give some kind of option if, one player wants to game, but not everybody else can. Or, if a smaller part of the group, especially if it's not like, a mid-battle and that's where they left off. But if there's any kind of leeway time, being able to let the party split up and do their own thing and then just kind of fill in the gaps afterwards is something that I always try to do as much as I can. And it just, sorry, had a little, it's just something that I feel is opportunistic in a lot of ways because I have been part of gaming groups that will cancel just because one person can't make it. And as understandable as that is for a lot of people, I always promote trying to do something different. So that's one of the main focuses that I had when I was building this particular server, was not just to provide a medium for us to all game together, excuse me, for us to all game together, especially with a friend overseas. But I wanted to provide alternative options for anyone that wanted to game to be able to game with me, or at least within the server, or even amongst themselves, when it wasn't an official gaming session, like when we weren't actually officially supposed to sit down and game. So that's kind of the preface for all of this. Now, how I fit this into my particular realm, as you guys know if you've watched the other ones, my other streams, mine is basically living, breathing world, kind of open world aspect where I have my players, create their own goals, their own sets, and they essentially go out and will learn and explore and find their way, through the world in order to accomplish those goals. Excuse me one second. So with that being said, most of my players will get dropped into this world where it makes sense based on their character, their backstory, and for the most part, most of them are relatively within the same time frame. Some of them are slightly ahead, slightly behind, and it all really depends on their gaming session, where they popped in, and what they were, been doing. But for the most part, I try to keep everybody relatively within the same, block of time, give or take a little bit, because it also makes it more fun for me to be able to interweave their stories if I can, or at least let them see the aftermath of what the other gaming group has been doing, which I think is just a really fun exercise if you have multiple gaming groups, is to kind of let them not interfere with each other, but it's the word I'm looking for. But basically, having one affect the other's gaming session, I think, can lead to some really interesting things. I know I've heard stories of DMs, taking that a step further and making one gaming group the BBEG of another gaming group, and neither know about it, and they're both just thinking that they're doing their own thing, but in reality, they're actually against each other. I like ideas like that, but at least for me, it's not so much with the intention that they will always intersect, or that at the end of the time I'm going to bring them all together. That may happen depending on how they play their characters. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's always an option, but I don't have them within the same block of time specifically so they will intersect. But it helps me keep the pacing of everything, and I can kind of understand the world in one time frame as I can, or as I need to. But it is really nice because having people interact with this living world is really nice for me to take what they've done and inspire me to have those effects ripple out to the other gaming sessions and give me new ideas and new opportunities for those players that I may or may not have come up with, because I wasn't thinking about, the next area they're going to go to. Or if they happen to choose to go into an area that some other gaming group just left, I already have it fresh in my mind, so I can use fresh off that gaming session to kind of fill in those gaps. So, but this particular gaming set, or this particular server that I did, is a little bit different than that. Because this was going to be not as coherent in terms of, it wasn't going to be as consistent, and it wasn't going to be in a really, really good time frame that I knew about, because I knew we weren't going to be gaming very often. I knew we weren't going to be gaming regularly and consistently. So I didn't want to have this lag too far ahead or too far behind any of my other gaming sessions that at the time were either weekly or monthly. So I decided to kind of change up a little bit. Because this was going to be designed for my one friend that was overseas, I decided to give an opportunity for my longer term players, the ones that have been gaming in the realm and have seen a lot more, especially with, if you were here for the last session, things about the prophecy and, or not the last session, but 2 sessions ago when Kage was here, we talked a little bit about how I deal with like prophecy in terms of like helping overarching stories and plots go through my realm. And I wanted to give kind of, not Easter eggs, but I wanted to give my longer term players a little bit more than they were. I wanted to give them a bonus. I wanted to give them some treats, some sneak peeks at things, and it wasn't necessarily going to be spoilers, but specifically I wanted to create an opportunity that for them to kind of understand the, like, not the severity, but understand the gravity of the situations that they had been in and are currently in their gaming sessions, present time gaming sessions. And I wanted to give them a vision of understanding in terms of these are the activities and things that you're doing, these are the actions you're taking, these are the people and the items that you're interacting with, and they're important, they're part of a bigger story that you are playing through. But I wanted to give them an opportunity to really get the gravity of this. So this particular Discord server, the Orc, is in my realm, but it is set very far into the future. A couple hundred years into the future from when most of my current players are gaming in terms of like their timelines. And it is technically an alternate future. And what I mean by that is because the way that I have High Point set up, I have understanding of things that will always have to happen, and then a bunch of things that, have opportunity to go one way or the other. And that's where the players come in. And so as much as I'd like to have this idea of a storyline, I mean, it would be easy to just have a start and an end and kind of know, hey, if they succeed, this is what happens. If they don't succeed, this isn't what happens. That would be easier, but that's just not how I work things. So I try to have an opportunity to where I have a few potential like outcomes planned, loosely planned, and based on the character's actions, the closer they get to those potentials, I start to fill in different details and start to buff out those specific, specific. Oh my Jesus, brain. This happens almost every stream, doesn't it? I think I have like one of these moments every stream. But yeah, I try to make sure that I have enough alternative outcomes planned to where no matter what my players do, I'm at least slightly prepared to have something ready, even if it's not completely scripted. And if not, at least it's given me, I've done enough, of my playthroughs to kind of understand these different outcomes. So if something that I hadn't, if it doesn't fit one of the outcomes that I've already made, at least I've already kind of thought through this enough times to where I would be pretty comfortable kind of, coming up with something being dynamic on the spot. So in that particular case, this is one of those alternatives. This is one of those many options that I foresee the realm going if certain things were or were not to happen based on all of my gaming sessions right now. So I have a couple of my players and their characters are kind of trapped in this current story arc involving a prophecy, and they're taking actions towards figuring out what the prophecy means, what their position is in the prophecy, and also trying to, of course, take on their own, take on their own agendas, right? So they have to take on their own agendas, and they're also trying to figure out this kind of bigger arching idea that they've kind of stumbled into. I mean, it wasn't like we started the gaming sessions with this prophecy. They've all kind of stumbled into it. They've all kind of figured out what their part is or what their part may be in it. Kage was talking about that before, where he stumbled across it but didn't realize it's probably not even to do with him. He's just kind of a carrier in the situation, which is also kind of being part of the prophecy. But you may not have a part in the prophecy, but you may be the reason why someone gets into it. And that's kind of what he feels his situation is, where as with my wife's character, that character just kind of fell into it and kind of decided to just wedge themselves into this. And unbeknownst to them, they were by prophecy kind of intended to do that. So it is one of those kind of fun plays where I get to have fun with that, because prophecies are really fun when you can make things vague, but also at the same time when your players kind of fall right into it and just don't realize that they're kind of falling into it, it makes it a lot easier. I'm just saying, it makes it a lot easier. So this particular alternative future, I wanted to run this because I wanted to give my my veteran players an idea of what happens if they basically go wrong. Like, this is the future that they would be gaming in if things went wrong. And the idea of it was, it's not going to be like particularly the characters they're playing or or what they are doing in this, because that's kind of more geared towards my overseas player. But the setting that they're in, the background, things that are happening, the larger schemes, those are the things that are all kind of Easter eggs for my main players. And I'll kind of point those out as we go along, because a lot of this, again, is just mainly another part of my realm that I made for them to game through. But again, the setting, the bigger ideas that we'll go through are kind of for them to kind of see, like, hey, you're gonna mess if you mess up in the past, if all your other characters don't work out, this may be what you would end up seeing. And it's kind of just a fun way to show them the cause and effect, and the consequences of what they may or may not do. So let's get right into it. So after getting in here into the server, you would join, and then once I gave you access to everything else, you would get this pretty little, menagerie of things. I did like doing this. This was actually really fun to come up with just how I wanted to organize it, and like actually having fun with all of the emotes. It's gonna I like that kind of stuff once in a while, and it was just really fun to customize this and really get into it. So with character, we have the character creation section with your little, writing notepad. I thought that was like a perfect little thing. And looking at this again, I'm already looking at a lot of these. I don't think I would change those emotes. I think those emotes are actually great for all of these. But let's see here. So this particular one, since we were running in Discord, I also changed things up slightly because we were going further into the future of my realm. I felt that this was also justifiable to do this. I kind of broke away from mainlining second edition rules and rule sets and those references, because I didn't really find anything that was good to fit into Discord that would be automated, that would help other players, because at this point I didn't want to have to, because we were going to be on voice and because we were going to be in Discord, I didn't want to have to go through the arduous steps of taking a player who was relatively new, not brand new, wasn't their first gaming session, but I didn't want to have to like basically reintroduce them to a whole new set. So I figured if we did this through Discord, and if we did this with the right bots, then it would be easier and more streamlined for them to kind of just get right into it. So with that, this entire Discord is all in 5e, using a bot that connects to D&D Beyond. Which one was it? Avery, yeah. Avery. There we go. This is a fantastic bot. If you haven't used it, it's amazing. It's so fun. You can customize a lot of things with it to be able to, we'll go over that. Like, you can, if you're not familiar with it, you can create a lot of commands that are custom that will interact with Discord and basically do anything that you want that the game would do, or that you would have access to on like Roll20 or another type of like virtual gaming set. So it made it really accessible to all of us, and I did really like it. There's probably a ton better ones all by now, but again, back in 2020, this one was fantastic, and it really suited our what we were doing. So anyway, you came in here, and we'll kind of just go over, I guess, the bigger concepts over here before I go page by page. But you had, oh, hey, greetings, gamers. Wow, I've had that for a long time. So you have your welcome section, you have your character creation. We have a section for characters to be posted. We'll go through that. The house rules, some 5e materials that people could look through. I have this out-of-game section, so this is going to be where just everything that's not specifically game-related is going to happen. Your in-game section, of course, everything game specifically related. And then we're going to get down here into these are the things that I created for people to game without the rest of the gaming group, and to be able to just game with amongst each other, game with me. It basically made it to where the server was accessible to everything else. So these are going to be all of the fun things that the entire anybody that was gaming here was going to be able to do. So with character creation, I did a few custom things just to kind of spice it up. Again, this was supposed to be really fun. It was supposed to be the future of High Point, so a lot has changed. If certain things were to happen and certain power shifts were going to happen in my realm, there was going to be a lot of changes. So I wanted to kind of reflect that again for my veteran players. So I did a lot of custom things that I don't normally do. So keep in mind, as OP as it sounds, there was kind of a point on the idea that the realm is not the same anymore, and the people in charge are a little bit less or are a little bit more lenient with what can be done, but that also does mean that it's across the board. So the whole, the idea is the realm has shifted balance, and this is to reflect that. So essentially you have, you can get a random character generator, or you can make a custom one. I really liked this because you could actually, you have a custom, all of these commands would actually build it for you. So you would actually have your stats rolled, and everything else like that would just be rolled up. You can get the entire character done, so all of your stuff would just be randomly generated. The character sheet would be generated for you. And what's really cool about this is once you have this character sheet that they provide you, once you have it filled out properly, it does all of the math and actually uploads into their servers, so Discord can read it directly. You don't actually, like, you can have a copy of it to view, but you can also have everything visible in Discord and done through Discord. So again, just was a really cool tool to use. This basically goes through all the rule sets that or the things that you have to do. So in Discord, using this bot, you have a couple roles to get your character rolled out and drawn up. And then my own custom rules. So you may roll each of these twice and choose whichever you'd like. So the idea is that you do the roll command, it would give you a set of stats. And then if you do that twice, you choose whichever block you'd like. If you're unsatisfied with either, you can roll a third time, but you have to keep that third one. So that was kind of me giving my players a little bit more, freedom. That is actually pretty similar to what I do with my second edition rules. You get your rules for all your stats, and then you get to choose out of your first two sets. And if you don't like it, you can get your third set. Or I can roll for you, and then you have to keep that third set as well. But the idea is that it's meant to give players that choice, but if you just really keep rolling crappy, you still get a chance. But if you're going to have a crappy character, again, I understand a lot of people like to min-max, but for me, because me and my gamers, we get more into what we're doing, we like to really get into the character's development. It's not going to be as important for us to have perfect stats across the board. Taking a hit to one of our stats just means that we get to have a little bit more fun with the character build, and we have to overcome a few extra, problems that may arise due to that in-game. And that's, again, more on the roleplay side, but that's kind of how we like to roll it, so it doesn't really, bother us too much. But after you get all that done, this is integrated with Google and Google Sheets, so you get to open it. You save it to your drive. You have to share this sheet with this particular email because that's how the servers are going to read it. Once you have all of the stats input from these roles, you're going to fill out everything based on the 5e books and everything else that you want. If anything was custom, I totally let my players do custom stuff. We just had to talk about it and make sure that it was balanced and everything else like that. Once you had that all done and it was shared properly, what was really cool is you had this command. Once you do the command, you would basically have everything available in Discord at that point, so you could look up your character sheet or any specific spot. And then you have these other set of commands, which I won't say every single one just yet, but the idea, there's other areas that we can go through what each one does, but the idea is that these are the custom ones that I either added that were pre-gen or pre-made, and then I was able to add into my Discord, or ones that I created. Actually, I think all of these... Set race, level bag. So all of these were pre-gen ones. I didn't create any of these ones, but these are essentially codes that you input into the bot that allow it to know, basically, just they're commands. I don't know why I'm trying to explain that. I think you all understand commands. So yeah, we'll go over those because there is a specific chat that I've made for when people create them. So we'll see what some of these commands do, which are really nice. I mean, they're pretty obvious, but they essentially help the bot build the entire character sheet and all the things it needs to reference. So all of the other commands when we're in combat and doing other things are all going to just link to it. And that's kind of what all of these build, is each little section that it kind of, pings to. And then we get into my house rules. So these are some of those little tweaks that I did to just make this a little bit spicier and to kind of reflect the fact that things changed in the realm. So all characters are allowed 1 feet from the link below. From the link below only. So basically, upon character creation, I gave everyone an extra feet. But it was specifically from this particular list. It wasn't just any feat you wanted. And this list is actually kind of fun. We'll pull it up here in a second. It was a really interesting list because it was a lot of homebrew stuff or non-standard stuff. But that was kind of, again, the fun part is I wanted to give them one little thing that made them different, that made them stand out, something that, again, would spice things up really early on, because I know we wouldn't be able to game very often, so I wanted things to just kind of pick up a little bit faster and have a little bit more fun with it. And instead of throwing them into like 5th or 10th level characters, this was just kind of a fun little way to just make the characters a little bit more interesting. But provided it fits your character and backstory, and you have the prerequisite. So it wasn't just a freebie, but you did get to do any of that. You will be granted 1 additional feat from this list every fifth level. I meant that to mean like, so at level 5, at level 10, at level 15. So at level 1, every 5th level would then mean, I think, level 6 technically. But the point was, at level 5, 10, 15, I was going to let them continuously gain an extra feat from this particular list. Again, just to spice things up. It really just made things a lot more fun, more dynamic, and it really helped speed the game up. I don't know if I would do this again. Maybe only 1 feat from the very beginning, kind of like a background extra. I don't know if I would do the 1 every 5th level, but it really was, I will say this, it was a fantastic way to kind of just jump into things and give everyone 1 extra piece of uniqueness out of the character that they built. You may still use the standard rule for feats, using the standard feats only. So when you would take the ability score increase, you could take a feat instead. So yeah, so I still allowed them. So again, at 5th level, you would get this feat, but if you also wanted to forego the ability score increase, you could take a normal feat that the game would normally allow. So again, just allowing for more dynamicism. And if a character did, for instance, have an issue with one of their stats from the beginning rolls, this is kind of one of those situations where they wouldn't mind taking the ability score instead of a feat they really wanted, especially if they're able to subsidize it with one of those extras from the list we're about to look at. And then note, not every feat on the list, I was supposed to say may be available right now. Some feats have assigned minimum levels and others scale based on level. Please discuss chosen feat with the DM. So again, because this was something new, I was just not really micromanaging about this, but I was very available for everybody. And essentially it was, you are able to, look at this list, but I wanted it to be, I wanted to be a little bit more involved because, of course, I wanted to make sure that people weren't going to abuse it. I mean, let's face it, that's really all it was. I didn't want it to get abused, so I made sure that they talked to me and that it was going to make sense, it was going to fit, and it wasn't just going to be something that was overpowered and I could just, do whatever with. So I found this page, a D&D Wiki homebrew page for 5th edition, and I started reading through it. I didn't read through all of them. I didn't, and that's why I had them talk to me, because I knew I didn't read through all of them. So a lot of the reason I had them talk to me was just to make sure that they didn't pick something that I didn't catch. But it was really fun. I don't know if these were filled out before or not. That's weird. I remember... Okay, there's still a ton. But this is a fantastic list and we're just going to kind of pick out some random ones. But let's go to like the combat section, right? So these were ones where, as long as they met the prerequisite, as long as it fit their character, and as long as it just didn't seem to break any, really just make them OP or just make them completely useless, we rolled with it. So everyone got to pick one of these. And yeah, these are just some, some really interesting one. I mean, proficiency in heavy armor, that's not necessarily that big of a deal for certain characters. Or no, you have to have the proficiency in heavy armor, so like 800-pound gorilla. What are we looking at here? Prerequisite, your mastery of heavy armor allows you to become an impenetrable and slow as an 800-pound gorilla, granting you the following benefits. Increase your strength score by 1 to a maximum of 20. At the end of a long rest, you may choose to gain temporary hit points equal to your level, plus your proficiency bonus. Also gaining a -1 penalty to your attack rolls, damage rolls, and AC, and a -5-foot penalty to your movement speed until the end of your next long rest. You lose these temporary hit points while not wearing any heavy armor. While benefiting from these temporary hit points, you gain +2 bonus to your AC, +1 total. So, I mean, I don't know why anyone would pick that, but it's a cute little feat, and I just think that, again, these really kind of added something that, could be kind of fun. I don't even remember really, how many of these we actually got into. Blocker, if I remember correctly, Blocker was an interesting one. When a creature makes an attack against another creature within 10 feet of you, you may use your reaction to move in between the attacker and your ally. the attack target is changed to you. So not quite Sentinel, which would help block it. But this is one of those unique situations where it's like, this would be kind of a fun feat. If you had like a selfless character or a character that was more righteous, this would be one of those fun feats that you could add in at that level 1 that just, especially if they were going to be like kind of tanky, if you wanted to make a level 1 paladin, this would be really great, especially if you're going to be running with mages. So this is a fun list. Again, not everything is great. I wish they had some basic, I didn't have to click on every single one. But then you got, discovery feats, being able to handle locations. This could be really fun to just change up the role play aspect and give people more out of combat options. Because I do know that I've played a lot of games where some DMs just aren't as equipped to do situations that would require feats and things outside of combat. So I do like when characters choose things that aren't necessarily going to gain them an advantage in a fight, but give their character an ability that may or may not be useful in a puzzle or sometime along the way, during the campaign. Interaction feats, again, one of those opportunities for getting more information or being able to, get more from the shopkeepers, more from the people that you talk to, understanding, the world at large a little bit better. Fantastic. It was really fun. Maybe we'll go through this one of these days and kind of rate some of these. There's just too many, though. I mean, look how long this thing is, and that's why I said like they had to come to me and talk to me about it. But it was fun. I liked it. It was really fun to have that. And no, that shouldn't be like that anymore. We're going to... Where is that? Is that one? No, it's that one. Okay, we're going to turn that off now. All right. So that was one of the major house rules that I made, was allowing that extra feat, just because, again, I really think it helped speed things up, gave people a little bit something unique, and... Let's face it, was it OP? There's probably a couple things that were OP about it, but I mean, that's kind of where you just have to have fun with it. Play as you're going to play, watch your players, make sure that, they're not trying to, do anything crazy. And if they are, I mean, sometimes you got to let them, and sometimes you got to show them what the consequences are. So, but I think that, a lot of people need to also just have better communication between their player and DM, and just be like, unless you're a group of strangers, just like, if it's not working out or if something's not right, like, y'all need to be able to talk to each other. Like, it doesn't have to be rude, but y'all just need to be able to, be like, hey, we're all here together. We're all here to have fun. I think this could make it more fun for some of us. Or if you're not ready to approach the DM, talk to at least a couple of the other players. Make sure, the problem isn't you. And if everyone's kind of on board, don't attack the DM all at once. But, at least when you bring it up, be like, hey, maybe... A couple of us talked and like, hey, we were thinking, could we try this? There's a lot of ways to do it, but I just, if you're not respectful to each other, it's gonna be kind of hard, right? Like, you're not looking at the game as something that was well crafted in for you to enjoy. You're looking at it as something to complete or beat. And I mean, if that's how y'all play, that's how y'all play. But understand, like, that does rub some people the wrong way if you're in one of those groups who's really trying to have that kind of fun, but all you're trying to do is figure out a way to break it, or essentially just roll through everything. Because, I think a lot of people find that the fun of D&D is the challenge. Having those battles that aren't just, one-hit kills and aren't just going to have you walk through without taking any damage. They're fun. I would say that it is nice to have an easy battle once in a while, especially once you've gotten some power and kind of get to flex a little bit. But, a lot of the times it's the challenge that makes the game fun. And yeah, if you're someone who just wants to say that you beat it, yeah, I would say that can be a little bit difficult for DMs who have those players. Just work with them. Like I said, on this one, I let players have the freedom to choose, but I did put my foot down when it was just something that either wouldn't work with their character, wouldn't work with their backstory, or I just felt was not in line with how we were trying to play. I mean, if it was going to be something that was just way too powerful or way too, I'm just going to roll, I just want to roll through everything and I don't want to, work for it, it was just going to be something I was going to shoot down because, again, that's just not really the direction that we were going to be taking this particular campaign for a friend who had asked me to do this. All right. So as part of those original these codes or these commands that I had brought in from basically all the people that built this bot, there's a whole community. They made all these different commands, but there are some extra ones, and I wanted to expand. There was a healing one, but I wanted to expand on it. So some of these are just basically copy paste with a couple just, code changes. But with this one, it's an opportunity to where you get this little, this thing called an alias. I'm not going to break down all of the different aspects of what each of them mean, but essentially the idea is that you can create counters in with this bot. You can create an inventory, and you can actually use these commands to use the inventory. It'll affect your stats. It's really a lot of fun. And so this was an opportunity for me to kind of just show them, like, this is how basically healing would work. So depending on what you have, the type of healing you have, and what type of vial or anything, these are just essentially how much health you're going to get. So if you want to look behind the scenes, or at least into what gaming in High Point is, this is how healing works in High Point. So you get essentially a ever increasing amount of healing based on what you buy. Of course, it's going to be more expensive, but eventually, you want pretty much the supreme healing, which is just going to I think that one's just an instant full. Everything else is a die roll, if I remember correctly. But we'll be able to look at that later. And then when you purchase or receive it, so when you purchase or receive it, you would put in this code, and then it would add it to your counter. And then when you, that's why this CC create basically creates the counter. This adds to the counter. And then these are the codes that would use the vial. So you would use it, you'd get the benefits, and then it would decrease your counter. So all of that was really fun to watch the coding and actually look at all of that and piece it all together so we can create our own. And then these are all the different codes and things that the players could use, that when you use these with the bot, they would just do different things. So coins would show you your count of how much money you had. Bottle is a particular one from down here. It's an activity, so I'll show you how that one works. Crit F is crit failing. So what happens when you crit fail, instead of me coming up with something or making them do die rolls, this kind of was just a chart that I made that would be able to do that. We had a deck of many, so basically this is another thing where you could do this code, and if you got the item deck of many, that would pull one of the cards for you. So some of these are interactions that they can do. Others, like grapple, will do, if you do the grapple code properly, you actually assign a target. So you could type in grapple, and then you would assign the target during a combat session, and it would do all of the rolls. It would figure out what the enemy's DC would be. It would do all of that, and then if it succeeded, it would apply the what are those called? Wow, I am so bad at this when I'm not actually in the middle of a game. The effects, whatever the actual negative effects like of grapple, that would be applied to the character in the combat section. We'll show you that when we go through the actual combat logs. But again, it's really fun. There's a lot of things that you can do. Again, most of these are either you can either customize them completely, or you can just download or not really download them, just copy and paste them from the archives. And then the snippets. I said I wasn't going to do this. Let me just do this. So aliases are essentially standalone code or commands. These are standalone things that we'll do. So like you type in the bag command, and it's going to show you what's in your inventory. And then you can add in other parts of that code will do different things with bag. But like these aliases are the actual like top end code. So it's what you actually do in order to activate whatever it is. Now, the snippets are things that you add to codes like on the end of it. So when you're doing for instance, sneak, if you are going to attack and you are able to do the sneak attack damage, you would type in the attack code with your target and everything and your weapon, which is really cool. It's like I'm attacking with this weapon at this target. It'll do all of the math for you. But if you tack on at the very end of your little command, if you tack on sneak, what it will do is it will add this sneak aspect of the extra damage for a sneak attack. So all of these are basically things that you would do. So like if you have a cleric or I think it's a cleric that gives you guidance. If you had guidance cast upon you and you type in your command to do a roll, if you type in your command to do the roll and then add guidance, it will add the guidance benefit for you. So that's just kind of, something that I really, really enjoyed about this. It was really fun to figure out how all of this worked and what I wanted to make work. So this was basically, this whole section just helped you to figure out how to create the character and start it all up. And then once you had all of that, what I asked everybody to do was follow my lead on this next page and basically post their character, post a picture and a descriptor, kind of following my lead in terms of how the format works. And this was just an opportunity for anybody new coming in, or if we hadn't gamed in a couple weeks, this is a quick way that we could kind of like catch up on, who everybody is. So, character information, and I do really like this with Discord. Just doing like little things like this, just to kind of block it out and make it look a little bit different was really fun too. I also just think it looks really nice. I like making things look nice and not just text blocks. But yeah, character information. Physical descriptions of characters. Pictures are okay to use, but please after the description for sorting purposes. And it's just, again, because when you're scrolling through here, you want to make sure you know who you're... I just wanted the names first. And then please update your post as needed instead of making new posts. So instead of just constantly posting just updates of everything, it was just, come in here, edit it. And then that way, every character had its own little post. And then, so I always just started, I just like to start with the character name, and then bold underline, so that way you immediately know who we're talking about. So if you're like, hey, who am I talking to? Oh, Noelle, who's that? Let me go over to character real quick. Boom. Oh, that's who I'm talking to. So we don't always have to post our character portrait in the chat, although you can. This is just a way to do quick referencing. So this was my character. I created my own because I, not just DMing it, but because I was really letting the bot do most of the work, and I wasn't having to take. I really didn't have to do a whole lot with this thing. It was great. I wanted a game with everybody. I wanted to go through the story as well, and I don't know. I honestly don't know how many DMs do this. I think it's fantastic if you know how to separate yourself from being a DM, and if you know how to not metagame, and you know how to truly play without your own insider knowledge. I think it's a fantastic thing to do to fill out a team, is to throw your own character in and then just really stick to whatever you say. So like with this one, I really wanted to stick with him being more of a support character. So I didn't really, I got to kind of sort of have fun with things, but I really didn't try to make him a puzzle solver or I didn't want him to basically be a clinch in any moment. I didn't want him to be, any kind of like Deus Ex kind of situation. I just wanted him to be in the background. I wanted to experience this build that I did, this whole, essentially this futuristic concept of my realm. I wanted to experience it because a lot of the times I do. A lot of times I will create a character or I will just create NPCs, but I will game them even by myself for a short time in situations just to kind of get a feel for, how I'm working certain mechanics or how I'm doing certain rules. So yeah, if you don't do that, try it out sometime. It's a lot of fun. You just really have to figure out that good balance between, not knowing you're the DM and knowing that you have to still kind of be a player. It's not easy, but it's fun when you can find a good balance. And again, if you can't, it's easier just to play NPCs because, then there are no rules. But if you're playing a character, you kind of have to be a little bit more strict with yourself on when you can. And like what I like to do is or what I was about to say is like when you can intervene or when you can interact, because like, again, you can't really have your character solve puzzles that you already know. But what I like to do is, again, I don't like to Deus Ex it, but if I get to a situation where either they're struggling or it really does fit my character to have that knowledge, instead of just saying he does, I will always dice roll it. Whether I think it has to be a situation on like whether he would know it, I'll make like an intelligence or a wisdom roll instead of just letting my, I know my character knows this. I'll roll it to see if he would remember it or if he would think about it. And unless someone else in game would bring it up to him, like, hey, didn't you study that? I wouldn't want to force my solution on it, but I will do a dice roll like that to see if it'll come up in his head or in conversation, or if he would just remember it just blankly. But if it's a situation where I know what I would do as a player, regardless of the fact that I know the solution, but I know what I would do. And the thing about that is, again, I try not to be one-sided. I try not to be biased. So if I played that character, I'm like, oh, well, I know the puzzle and I know what I would do. Like, I try not to do that. But if what I know what I would do would be the solution to the puzzle the way that I've described it, or if my character, if I know as a player, oh, I would do this thing over here and it's absolutely going to screw everybody over. The thing is because I know the solution and I know my effect. I know whether or not my effect will help them solve it or really, really help them not solve it. Maybe it'll actually spring the trap. The idea is that I don't necessarily always trust myself in bigger situations, like whether or not they're trying to solve a trap or a puzzle or in combat or, asking certain questions or finding a secret hatch. Like, the idea is that depending on if it makes sense that my character either would act out in a certain way or his skill sets would come in play, I try to make it a roll. So it's either going to be a stat roll based on whether or not he would be able to actually do it, or if it's something where I know I would do it as a player, but I don't want to be I'm also the DM, so I'm kind of cheating. In order not to do that, I'll do things like percentile rolls. And that's kind of a situation of, well, what are the chances that I would do this, right? Like, if I know that that's what I would have come up with as a player, I give myself a good opportunity of like, okay, well, let's be honest. Like, I probably would have had that idea, but I wouldn't have had it all fleshed out because I hadn't been thinking about it for the last 5 days. So let's say there's a 20% chance that I not only would have come up with that idea, but I would have gotten to this point to want to do that action. I'll give it 20% chance. And then sometimes I'll ask my players, hey, pick high or low. Or sometimes I'll, do something to make a decision on whether or not I should roll high or low. I roll my percentiles. And let's say if I say high, that means I have to roll 80% or higher. And if I say low, that means I have to roll within 1 or 20. And then basically I'll decide from there. And if I roll poorly, then hey, my character doesn't help out and that sucks. And again, I do this whether or not I'd be helpful or not. So if I'm going to do something that's stupid, then I'm going to make the same roll. And if I end up doing the roll that says, hey, you're going to do that stupid thing, I just let it play out because I feel that's more fair than me just deciding when I should be helpful and when I shouldn't. So that's what I try to do that's what I do when I'm playing a character, not when I'm NPCing, because NPCs play different roles. I play them differently. I mean, I don't really, because for the most part, it's easier for me to play an NPC, I guess, because I kind of know what they do and don't know, and I kind of already know, like, what I'd be willing to let them do and not do. But I still do a lot of roles for NPCs, I guess, but it's much more about the character, and NPCs also have a lot more of their own agendas, whereas being a character, I want my own agenda, right? So an NPC, I've assigned it. It doesn't matter what I want to do. That NPC has its own agenda, own mindset, own way of acting, and I'm not going to change that. I've made that character. That character's going to keep. That NPC is going to keep doing what it does because that's what it's designed to do. But when I make a character, when I want to play my own game, I don't want that. I don't want to assign him like, hey, that's what you're doing. Move on. I might as well just bring an NPC into the game. This is where I want to be able to have my own desires. I want to be able to basically test myself as a DM. I want to be able to be like, hey, I would do this to somebody. Let's say I do it to myself. Like, how as a DM would I respond? So it's a fun, difficult balance. But like I said, whenever it comes to something that I feel would actually sway or I may have bias in, I will default to doing a roll to try to keep it as fair as possible. But anyway, let's see what my character was. So striking character. Definitely not my own drawing or anything. That is definitely something I pulled off the internet. I don't think I mind that too much, but I have understood that if I do want to bring out my podcast again, or if I do want to more D&D online, I'm gonna have to be kind of careful with the stuff I choose to use. Let's see. Noel is a good-looking, devilish rogue who wins the hearts of those he meets. He has a knack for storytelling and getting the attention of young, impressionable ladies. He is fair and honest for a rogue, never stealing from those who can't afford it, and never from those who don't deserve it. He owes everything to his mentor, a nasty scoundrel, probably rotting in a cell somewhere. Noel has no soft spot for this individual. He can appear cocky and arrogant, believe in himself so much he has convinced himself no one could fool him, or He can appear cocky and arrogant, believing in himself. That typo. Believing in himself so much, he has convinced himself no one could fool him the way he fools others. So yeah, I made this character because, again, I like rogues. Rogues are really fun for a lot of different reasons. I actually like them more for roleplay purposes than I do for their stats and their combat. But I wanted to kind of do that whole, I wanted to break that mold. I didn't want to be a scoundrel, and I didn't want to, he was going to be more of a character that wanted to be known for, he wanted notoriety. He wanted to be known to be the one that could get in anywhere and take anything and, be anyone. He wanted to kind of be known as someone you go to help solve problems, but he wasn't like a black market level, rogue. He doesn't want to, ruin lives. He wants to make the world better, but he has a certain set of talents that makes him do that. So being honest, again, he's never lied about what he is or what he does, but that's the idea, is he charms his way into doing the right thing. Not so much now that I'm talking about it, it definitely wasn't meant to be a Robin Hood type of character, but I guess Robin Hood does kind of make more sense in terms of that character build, but it wasn't really inspired off of or meant to be a Robin Hood character. It was just more of I wanted this more professional type of thief, a rogue who was more about, again, the storytelling, more like fast talk. He was more meant to be a higher class person who can kind of get in anywhere until you find out he's a con man. But he fits in well with high society, and that's why he gets away with it. So that was kind of the character build design. Not too bad, I don't think. Let's see. We have Shaddai. By the way, so if you haven't noticed, the orc, this particular campaign does take place in a orc settlement. And so everyone's going to be an orc. The reason for that is because the person I made this for, that's what they kind of wanted to do. And I thought that would be really fun. I thought it would be kind of fun to, instead of having all this craziness, kind of narrow it down and let everybody have something similar that pulled us all together. But again, really let themselves, kind of spread out and be their own characters while still having that commonality that we could all kind of go to. So here we have Shaddai. Shaddai may seem like your typical run-of-the-mill street kid with a bad temper, but underneath all of that metal and anger is a fighter who is loyal to her friends and says fuck all to everyone else. Her friends know that she can blow up at the slightest insult, which can sometimes be used to their advantage during raids or their various hijinks. Okay, I remember the build for I remember playing this character, not playing this character. This is my wife's character, but I remember this character now. This was a very interesting one for her. She doesn't normally play a very outspoken character, so this is really fun to watch her play this. Just this very sassy, very brash kind of character. Is definitely not normal for her. She will stop at nothing to become wealthy and reclaim what was stolen from her, even if that means blackmailing anyone who may have a lead. Though she has not made much progress as she has an uncontrollable urge to steal anything valuable as soon as she sets her eyes on it. So, yeah, Shaddai was interesting. Well, interesting that she is a fighter, but I love that she made her character into a klepto. And it's one of those things where this is the kind of stuff that I really appreciate with my characters, because that breaks a lot of molds, right? Most people would assume that, like, well, you steal, like, you have to be a rogue. It's like, no, she's just a kleptomaniac. Like, she's just a fighter who likes shiny things. And if you leave your bracelet, or if you're drunk, passed out, and there's some gold there, she's gonna swipe it. You don't have to be a rogue to be a thief. You know what I mean? She's not a thief by class. She's just a thief by nature. And I love that. I love that she'll just punch someone out and then take their wallet and walk off. So great little opportunity. But yeah, I like that she also adds in this like little mystique of a backstory. She's trying to reclaim something that's lost, and she's willing to blackmail people who might have a lead. I loved this. I love when my players, like, again, they understood the assignment. The idea is that this is supposed to intrigue the other players. It's not supposed to be everything about your character. And if you've watched some of my other live streams, you know that I'm actually a big proponent of allowing my players amnesty in terms of like controlling their character's information. So I'm very big on letting my players decide what other players know about their character. And if they want to be secretive about things, that's kind of the whole purpose. It's their agenda. I'm not a huge fan personally of the D&D groups that like everybody knows everything about the characters. And it's almost a little too much for me, because that takes a little bit of, it's like, if you know too much, then you have an expectation. And if I'm expected to act and play my character in a certain way, it's harder for me to allow moments where it's like, oh, ever since what's been going on, my character would be kind of feeling this way, and this is an opportunity I'll take. I don't want to have those moments where it's like, hey, that's not your character. Like you have this build and that's your background, and like you've been doing. It's like I like the idea of giving players something secretive to hold on to, because it gives other players intrigue into finding out about their character. They want to talk together more. They want to interact with each other, which I also think is sometimes underutilized in games, in like private games, where you see this a lot in like entertainment value D&D sessions. But I've been in so many games where people will hear other players talk about their characters, and they'll do it out of game. They'll know all of this metadata about each other's characters, but in game it's hard to believe that these characters have known each other for 5 years in game and have gone through level 1 through 10. And you've all never just sat down and talked. Like you only strategize, you talk to diplomats, you have all these cool friends and followers, but game-wise, it's just like, oh yeah, I'm sure we talk later. And it's like, that's fine. Again, every gaming session does it its own way. There's plenty of things that I kind of hand wave and assume happen in the background, or I talk to my players and say, hey, unless you want to do this, this is happening in the background, and these are the assumptions we're going to make based off of it. But I do really enjoy when, like as a player and as a DM, when players truly interact and almost make part of the game, like make that interaction part of the game, where it's not just interacting just to get some information, but that is the actual gameplay, like actually going through those steps of developing those friendships, especially when you have characters that don't necessarily have a reason to be together other than they either got hired or they all found themselves in the same jail cell. Like whatever you do to give them that intro is great, but without digging deeper on that like RP level, I feel like it's just there's too many assumptions of, okay, well, we were in the same place and now we have a common enemy, so hey, I guess we're just gonna party up. Like, I don't know. I feel like that lacks a little bit, and I prefer having a little bit of something like this, something to intrigue. So all the players know that there's something going on with Shaddai in the background, but what is it exactly? And that's kind of that whole thing of it allows me and that player to have a completely solo game where I'm developing this story with that player. With me and Shaddai, we are going through this story and figuring out what are the secrets that she wants to discover, what are the things that she needs to unlock, and who does she need to talk to. Meanwhile, those are her own personal agenda items along the same campaign along with the party. So while they're going to town and then during a shopping session, maybe she sneaks off to go have a conversation, and that's a whole... that's a one-on-one gaming session. The next time she wants to play and no one else is available, we could say that during shopping, you went off to go find out about your past. And those are those things that I think can really enhance gameplay and give more opportunities for games. Because again, let's say your party is stopped in a combat session and only one person or two people want to play. But if they just came from town, just backdate it. Don't put either make it like this is where you can put those really, really easy, fun combat sessions to kind of give players that like idea that they've they've leveled up. Because I feel like a lot of the times it does suck when you're finally like level 8, level 9, you have all this cool stuff, and every battle you almost die, and it's like, but you've seen all of these other NPCs, you see all these things that are so powerful, and the first time you meet them, they come in, they stomp you, and that's kind of like, your BBEG. Like, you have those moments that you see, and that's what makes you want to become powerful. But I've learned as a player through 10 years of gaming, over 10 years at this point, there comes a point to where you're just like, am I any stronger than I was at day one? Because there was a point to where it's like, yes, it's always supposed to get more challenging. I mean, it's always supposed to level up with you, but there does kind of get a point to where you sit back and you're like, but really, I'm not technically any stronger. Like, if every battle ends with someone going down and having to be revived and everybody else needing to do a long rest, if that's what it's been like since level 1 and you're on level 10, in reality, it's like, when did your character become uber powerful? Like, all of those NPCs that you're now more powerful than, they were able to stomp you. Where are the people you get to stomp? Like, it's not necessarily something that you don't want to make the game too easy, but once in a while, just throw in something at them that appears different, or giving them a reason to go after something that is beneath them, but just kind of being able to have that flex moment. And so moments like, what I was just talking about, going back to this, let's say you're in the middle of a combat, or you're in the middle of a session where you cannot progress without the whole gaming group. But if you had just come from, say, a major town or a market right before this battle, you could jump back to that time frame. Make sure as a DM that nothing crazy, like they can't go get lost and they can't go get arrested and they can't die. But this is where you can let them, or at least where I let my characters do those things that are on their own personal agenda list instead of what has to be done for the whole party. So you can let them go back in time and go have conversations that you didn't want to have with the rest of the party there. You can let them make rolls and try to, maybe just dialogue and metagame some things that they've been working on. So, like, let's say you have a character who who wants to do something cool, and you're working with them and you're just trying to figure out, maybe like it's a feat or maybe it's a special kind of attack. Like, sit down and do a gaming session where you're talking about how did they come up with this and how are they practicing it. So you can kind of fill in all those gaps of, like, we haven't had the time to sit down and talk about this, but technically my character would have been practicing like the whole time, right? Like, I'm developing this new technique, so it's not like I just sat down and just one day thought of it and now I can do it. So you can go and backdate those. You can go and make certain roles. You can go have conversations with NPCs that would have, like, let you come up with those ideas or helped you progress in those character ways. So that's one of those opportunities that I say, like, yeah, it's fun when everybody kind of has some knowledge of each other, but when you allow each player to kind of also have their own agenda and have their own things in the background, it just opens up a lot of more fun opportunities, in my opinion, in order to not only game individually, but even within the group, because the group has a common goal, but it's a lot more fun when they do things that aren't necessarily perfectly in line with the common goal, because maybe their goal is a little bit more important. It's one of those things that creates some interesting dynamic situations. And I would say give it a try. If you haven't given that a try yet, or if you haven't, really done that whole splitting the party into little small groups when only someone's available, give that a try and just see. Again, one of the easiest thing to do is do like a past thing. Jump back into the past, do some stuff. And then, yeah, if you want to throw a combat, if they were really wanting to do a combat, throw one of those, like, minion battles at them. Throw them like 20 guys that they get jumped in an alleyway by like 8 people, but they're just low-level punks. So it looks like it's intimidating, but halfway through the battle they realize, like, it's not that big of a deal, and then they just get to, like, if you have 2 people gaming together, they were in a town and they get jumped by 8 people, that sounds like it's going to be a wreck of a time. And maybe that, especially if initiative rolls get off to the wrong start and the enemies start attacking them all at once, they're going to be kind of freaked out at first. But then if they realize that none of the enemies hit for more than a D4, and 2 hits on any given enemy will take them down, after there's only like 5 left, they're going to kind of go, oh, this ain't that bad. And then they're just going to have fun mollywopping on them. And I kind of think that's a fun idea. I think it's really nice to let them have those moments of being scared and then realizing that there's nothing to be scared of. And then they just get to have fun. And then you start to see in moments like that, when it's like, I think a lot of us have seen that, where when the gaming group seems to have the edge, or when it seems like it's pretty much tipped in their favor, that's when people really start getting creative because they're not as worried. So that's kind of another option to pull those creative moments out, is give them an easy battle, because once they realize it's easy, then you start to see them having fun and kind of just, dicking around with it. And it's really interesting when you get to, like, see what characters really want to do when they're not worried about dying. All right, Venla. So Venla is Kage's character. So Kage made Venla, and I don't even know how many characters he has in my realm at this point. But yeah, Venla was great. Venla is a druid. By the way, I didn't mention this, but everyone had their character name and then their class and then their level at this time. So we only got up to level 4s and 5s Yeah, this one didn't last as long as we wanted it to, but again, it was a lot of production. We gamed for a couple months, but it just fell apart because, again, time, scheduling, very difficult scheduling. But Vinla, let's see. This was a fantastic picture. This was such a good way. Oh, so cool part about this picture. So if you'll notice, this particular picture, this druid has like a branch for an arm. Because of the picture, Kage wanted to actually have that as part of their backstory. They wanted to be able to actually have this like branch arm. But it wasn't originally like, I don't think it was originally his idea to do this. But because of this picture, it spawned this, and this was one of those custom things that we were able to discuss because he wanted to be a druid in the future where things have changed. This actually fell right in line with being able to do that. Venla, being raised by her grandmother Baggy, spent her childhood listening to stories of old and hearing about the amazing adventures of her ancestors. But being very shy, she never thought she'd be able to follow in their footsteps. Venla spent most of her time talking with the trees and lying under the sun, learning more about history because of what she finds in the land. On one of her hikes into the woods, her arm was torn off by a direwolf. Lost, alone, and afraid, Venla believed she would die there until a lone druid came to her rescue. Every day thereafter, Venla returned to that forest to train and learn from her new teacher. Her curiosity about life and the world piqued. She sets out, though very shy, to seek out new knowledge of the world and what she can become. So with that backstory, fantastic backstory, by the way. We wrote it into the backstory that an attack by a direwolf lost her arm, and this legendary druid basically took her under their wing, not only healed her, but provided her the arm. So that arm is actually, although it is fueled by her and her life essence, it was not her own doing. So it was kind of one of those opportunities for also me to give her a kind of a higher tier item, I guess, or weapon that we can develop and go through. It was kind of one of those opportunities. Plus, with my realm, it also fits in because becoming a druid's kind of difficult sometimes because usually there's a lot of backstory that has to be figured out just because, not like it's not difficult, it's just I really like to make sure that with druids, they're not as common in my realm. So usually especially if you want to like multi-class and become a druid, it's actually really hard because you have to find a very high level druid. And that's kind of essentially what we wrote into the backstory that happened to Venla. So Venla actually became a druid after this interaction, and just her love of nature kind of naturally, brought her towards that way. And I kind of have it in the background that it's because of her love and her attunement with nature that the graft and the branch arm was actually able to take at all. And it actually does grow with her. She doesn't have to get it replaced or anything. It actually grows in proportionate to her size, and is actually grafted in. It roots into her system. It's actually a really cool concept. But yeah, all of that off of a picture. That was really fun to do. And Siggy, this was our friend from overseas. They were the one who wanted to kind of start all of this. So they were the one that wanted to do the whole thing, and they wanted to kind of have this like, they were the one that created this like orc concept because they really wanted to create one. So I just thought it would kind of be really fun for everybody to kind of jump in on this. So Siggy hails from a distant town where she made her name and her coin from underground fighting rings. Known for the boar skin she wears on her back, Siggy throws her weight into the bouts, favoring heavy weaponry and fists to take on opponents. Despite this barbaric exterior, she is a bit of a sweetheart. Her gullibility, obliviousness to social cues, and her sense of honor have led her away from her comfort of the mixed race city to the nomadic settlement. Basically, yeah, she used to be in bigger cities with lots of things, and now she's back with her own people because it seems that most of the time she can't get along with the average person. Tends to take things differently, and yeah, just doesn't find too much solace with with most locals. Sweet on Sweet on a local socialite, whether said socialite is aware of it or not, Siggy has convinced herself that she needs a sizable dowry to gain her hand. So that's one of the NPCs that Siggy has decided that she wants to court. She just doesn't know how yet. So we'll go over that a little bit later. Associates of the socialite became aware of Siggy and her goals and tried to manipulate her, convincing her to intentionally lose her next bout in order to receive the socialite's hand. Conflicted, her pride won out and she eventually refused, instead defeating her opponent. Having been driven out of town with nothing but the boarskin on her back, Siggy is convinced she will return after she has the wealth required for a dowry, however big that might be. So what's really cool about this is because she gave me all of this backstory, I actually wrote this in to where she hails from the Boarskin clan, which had really helped me fill out this new area because, again, I didn't really know what to do with an orc settlement. So I actually had this whole area kind of basically being run by orcs in different settlements. So you have the Boarskins, which are going to be more of your hunters, your fighters, your barbarians. They're much more of the aggressive type. And essentially in this case, in her old clan, she wanted to wed somebody. They didn't want that. So they basically forced her out, and now she wants to go and reclaim her love, which, again, I love that as a personal character backstory, because instead of just, hey, we're all a party and we have, a BBEG to go fight, Siggy has her own goals. Her own goal is to become wealthy and rich, so she can go back and come back with honor and fame and fortune, so she can get wed. I love the idea that everyone has a different goal, because it gives them different motivations, and it'll give them different opportunities to react differently to different situations based on those goals, right? It's not just everybody just automatically says yes. Siggy might say no to an opportunity that helps the party if it means giving up the investment to that dowry. You know what I mean? Siggy may not want to go seduce an NPC because of the honor and love that she has for her maiden in her past town. So there's there's that really unique opportunity to where I like when players really develop their characters and have those personal motivations, because, again, you get a lot more dynamic play from them instead of everyone just saying, oh yeah, that's the goal, we're all going to go through it. Cosmic Purge, what's up? How you doing? I don't know. I'm assuming you just got here. We're kind of going over an old Discord of mine. I did a D&D Discord. I've done a couple, but this is one that I haven't gone through in a while, and I'm kind of just going over some of the stuff and kind of reacting to it. It's fun to go down memory lane. This was 3 years ago. I haven't looked at this thing in over, I think, like a year and a half. So it's fun to read through it. But yeah, so again, I love that every character so far has made their own history, their own sense of self, and they all have their own goals, because, again, it allows for them to react to situations purely uniquely and not just, well, it's for the good of the party, so let's just do it. Darnas. So Darnas, I think Darnas is actually our first... Darnas is the first person who wanted to try out multi-classing, because right around this time we found out that the bot was able to do multi-classing. We actually found out that they added multi-classing to the bot feature, so he wanted to give it a try. And he wanted to also break the mold, because he's like that, so he didn't want to necessarily be an orc, which he didn't have to be because of the particular settlement he was at. So he broke the mold and became... forgot what the official name, a Triton. That's right. He's a Triton. I was going to say, I remember it has a unique name. Let's see. So Darnas has been in the settlement for several months now, mainly working as a fisherman on the boats. He hails from an underwater city in the Great River, several days' swim from the encampment. His ability to breathe naturally underwater is a huge benefit for setting various traps and fishing nets. Since he started living and helping at the encampment, there's been a plentiful supply of lobster and other shellfish available. He's on the smaller side, not for a Triton, but for someone who hails from the surface. He stands about 5 feet and weighs in just over 100 pounds. Puny by an orc standard, but he's been accepted because of his other strengths, particularly in the river. Let's see what's going on, Cosmic. I have a little bit of an issue with your Twitch picture because of the white color and PDFs light up when someone goes live. It makes it hard to tell if you're live or not. With your Twitch picture because of the white color and PFP lights up when someone goes live. It makes it hard. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I don't really know what I want to do with my my beginning stream and all of that stuff. Like I have a very, very basic knowledge of like stream elements and how to do all of this. Most of it I learned from my wife when she was streaming. I kind of just, peeked over her shoulder when she created things and set it all up. So thank you for letting me know that. I will have to look into that. I didn't know really what I wanted to do for like the opening stream. I just kind of threw my logo up there. It's kind of a remnant from when I was just doing it on YouTube for the first couple episodes, because it was just, again, this wasn't really actually supposed to be like a big interactive thing. At first, it was just supposed to be me being able to talk openly and record myself. And I felt like after a while, I'm like, no, I actually really want more of this like interaction with you guys. So I came over to here. So I haven't really figured out how to make that better yet. I will look into that this weekend, though. Thank you for bringing that up, because if it's hard to know if I'm live, that's going to be a problem. All right, so yeah, so Darnas was a really interesting character. We'll go into more of like what he's talking about, because yeah, he mentions like the settlement, the encampment. They're on the river, so we'll go into that in some of the other sections. But yeah, really cool character, especially bringing that, like, I like that he wrote in why he's accepted and not an orc, instead of just being like, I don't want to be an orc, bah. He actually really went out of his way to be like, no, I want to make sense why I'm here, because he knows that I appreciate that. So being able to come in, help them out, and be like, look, you guys are, a fishing village. You guys really, have your time in the water. I'm not really wanting to go back home. I can help, I'll pay my way, and I really like that because it really fit into the setting, and he did a really good job at making sure his character fit. Let's see, there's a streamer who has a blue and pink picture, but when they are not live, the colors are faded to shades of gray, but with yours being white, it makes it real hard to tell. That makes sense. You know what? Yeah, let me work on that this weekend. I'll see if I can do... I'll see if I can do something where, yeah, I'll have a very distinctive difference and maybe like a distinctive color change. Or I'll just redo the logo, because that's an old ass logo. I don't even know why I use that one anymore. I mean, probably because I haven't made a new one in forever. But yeah, I'll look around. There's a couple other streamers that I watch their stream, but I don't really ever see the beginning. I don't ever like go back to see the beginning. So I should get a couple ideas. Yeah, thank you for that. I will have to look into seeing if I can alternate or make it sure it looks different when I'm live or not. And then let's see here. Okay, and then our last character, Maddox, Paladin, also broke the tradition with not being an orc, which again was totally fine. It wasn't required that everyone be an orc, but I did like that everyone kind of followed suit with it. But it is really nice just to see that difference, because again, I like the variety. I like when people break the mold, but it is kind of nice to have a kind of a set theme that was kind of going, and now we just have those extras. So Maddox is a red dragonborn raised by the orphanage, attacked to his village, attached. Wow. It has been a long week, y'all. Maddox is a red dragonborn raised by the orphanage attached to his village temple. He is a devout follower of Desader. Desader, funny enough, when we talk more about High Point, so right now, in terms of like present day, Zenith is the current ruler of High Point. That is my character, that eventually became a god. So that is who runs High Point. In this particular future, Desader is the current ruler of High Point, which was one of the major differences that I made, and that was actually a really big like opening intro to this for my veteran gamers, because that was like one of the first things when I introed everything and told them all about this stuff, and they were like, oh, this is a cool setting, I really like what we're doing. And then I dropped that bombshell that when they talked about the temples, and it's like, and then you'll because I have it in here, but it's like, then you'll go to the temple, and it was like dedicated to the main gods, and they were expecting to see Zenith, and what they found was Desader, a god that they have never heard of before. So that was really interesting to see their reaction to a god that they have never heard of currently taking the place of Zenith. And this particular person wanted to be their follower, which was fantastic because it was a great way to intro it, just kind of right in their face. And Desater is not a good god. Zenith is a true neutral god. Desater is an evil god. So that's part of the reason why a lot of things changed in High Point for this particular setting. He does nearly everything in the name of his god and will offer people assistance and protection he deems in need. While he has an easygoing personality, he is instantly distrustful of anyone high in any temple's hierarchy. He believes that the corruption of greed and tyranny must be burned from the realm. He thinks very highly of himself due to being raised as the gift of the gods, but does not think of the common person as below him either. He will fight till his last breath for a friend, spend his last copper on someone in need, and give his last ration to a hungry child, but won't think twice about using his maul to turn someone he deems unworthy into a meat patty and then shovel them off the road so as to not impact traffic. He does his best to appear non-threatening. He has spent the last year traveling from his village in hopes of pleasing his god by helping those in need, but has found that many find him to be scary and more than once. Wow, I cannot read today. He has spent the last year traveling from his village in hopes of pleasing his god by helping those in need, but has found that many find him to be scary, and more than once has been mistaken for a wild beast. Let's see. What's going on, Cosmic? Write me a novel here. I have an area that is early to mid-game, 5th to 8th level, that is a dwarf settlement. It is pure iron, hollowed out giant maze. That is awesome. Unknown to the residents, was a weapon forged and wielded by the divine ancestor. The father of all dwarves died in an ancient war and was buried within the desert, known as the Enchanted Sands. Nice. The mace's spikes are pure iron pyramids that over time and due to erosion from the weather fall off, landing nearby in ways that look like pyramids made of iron. Whenever a spike from the mace falls off, it reveals a magical circle that acts as a barrier from outside damage. The handle of the mace, still in the hand of the fallen god, is buried, and the dwarves use it as a pre-built shaft for their mining. Shortly before the party first encounters the town, there are rumors that the miners found a cave near the shaft. This leads into a dungeon that is the fallen god's remains, the bones acting like tunnels. I can see it too, because because they would eventually, yes, oh my god, I see it. Oh, that is such a good description. The bones acting like tunnels. You might be wondering what the dwarves are mining for. Divinium. It is the ore that, in a nutshell, is crystallized form of the god's organs. Oh my god, in my world, a god's flesh may decompose like normal, but the organs crystallize into a divine ore. Bro, that's genius. That is genius. Different organs cause divinium to form from different purities. The more important the organ is, the heart, the brain, the higher the purity. Oh, that's brilliant. The less important the organ, the less pure the divinium vine becomes, liver, bladder, etc. 1 pound of the purest divinium is worth. Bro, you gotta let me catch up. 1 pound of the purest divinium is worth around 12 to 3,600 platinum, as it should be. Depending on the size of the ore's vein, the bigger the vein, the more of it there's to go around, the lower the value. I mean, that makes sense. And it will be the material the party can harvest for weapon crafting. The fun part is throughout most of the Fallen God's Remains dungeons, most encounters will be against ooze that, back when the god was alive, served as the god's red and white blood cells, the immune system. It is a mystery as to how they remain alive after their host died millennia ago, since the god's remains are the dungeon and the only bones remain, and the whole dungeon emits a divination aura. Oh, if that isn't like a hook, man, like seriously, that is a hell of a hook for a gaming session. In case detect magic is used, it also serves to mask the necromancer and undead beholder's auras, as there is so much divination that that anything else can be detected. Yeah, in situations like that, usually when someone tries to do a detection magic or anything like that, when you're in a saturated place like that, it basically just makes them go blind, but in all of their senses. Like, essentially, it's just a sensory overload, because it's basically like, what were you expecting? Dude, that is crazy. I like that. That is such a cool... I love doing stuff with dwarves. I do have a couple of dwarven holds, but man, like, I've thought of like things to do with like divine being bodies and stuff, like using skulls in certain like different dimensions, or even just like out in like cosmic air, like basically in the cosmos, of having like floating body parts, but having one that was buried and I love it. That is fantastic. The fight with the necromancer and the undead beholder is meant to take place in the fallen god's skull cavity. Ooh. Yeah, that would make sense. I mean, the necromancer would definitely want to... Yeah, I think that would make sense, too. Oh, is the necromancer trying to raise him? Is that why the necromancer is there? Is it trying to res anything it can? Or is that why the red blood cells are still alive? Because the necromancer tried to raise the divine creature and only did that? Or is it because the god isn't... See, this is what happens. This is what happens, y'all. When y'all tell me your D&D stuff, my brain just lights up and goes, "Oh, I want to play with that." Jesus, I have stuff to read, damn it. Y'all got me thinking about stuff that isn't even mine at this point. Jeez. All right, so those are the characters that we're gaming in this realm. I think this is a great mix. I mean, you have... you have your 3 orcs that are like the main party, and then or 4 orcs that are like your main group, and then you have your 2 guys. Now these aren't like secondary characters; they were full characters in this party. But it's just nice to have like orc campaign with your 4 main orcs, and then you have 2 side characters that really round out the party and make it fantastic. But again, they're not orcs, so it adds a little bit interesting dynamic. So let us go to the house rules. Now, house rules are going to be a little bit different. Again, not just because of that extra feat that we talked about before. For anybody who wasn't here before, you get 1 extra part of the house rules. You get 1 feat at level 1, and then at 5, 10, 15, you get 1 feat from this specific list. That is one of the house rules. Now we're going to go into the rest of the house rules. Let's see. Cosmic. The necromancer is more interested in the ore as material components for the higher level spells, 7th level and higher. Yeah, that definitely makes way more sense than what I was going with. I think my mind just always goes to high level gaming stuff. Give me like 30 seconds. I have to pop out of the room real quick. I'll be right back, and then we're going to get into some of those the specific house rules that I created for this particular D&D campaign in terms of the Discord one, because again, I was trying to make it a little bit more accessible, a little bit faster pace, and this was going to be something that kind of made it a little bit more fun. So I will be right back, y'all. Give me just like 1 minute. All right, we are back. Had to go coordinate for dinner plans later. Pizza might be sounding pretty darn good. All right, let us get moving to house rules. If Cosmic would let me. The Necromancer is just a subclass of wizard, but his race is dwarf. For reasons yet to be decided, he was once exiled from the Iron Mace settlement and came back to take the ore to partly screw over the economy and partly for the spell components. I mean, a good old revenge story is a fantastic way to have a BBEG. I mean, as cliche as it might be, I mean, it's always nice to have a unique reason why the BBEG is the way they are. I always like to add the spin that I don't want to add the cliche spin that, oh, there's a reason behind it. And, oh, I kind of, oh, his parents were killed. Of course he became evil. I don't want to do that. But it's great when, for some reason, like, once you find out their motives, it's hard to disagree with them. Like, I like I like creating BBEGs who, not just from their own narrative, they're the good guy, but really, if you were to take a step back and take away, some key factors, overall they are a good guy of their own story, or of a story. I mean, I've made BBEGs that were like loved, like not just because people were brainwashed, like absolutely they were, loved, kings in their kingdom, but because of certain aspects that they had to allow in order for their kingdom to be so prosperable, they looked evil. But in the end, destroying them actually ended up really hurting the majority of that populace, even though from one perspective, it was a greater good to stop him. From another prison, it was actually it could have been considered a greater good to keep him. And it was one of those, I like adding those moral choices. Not quite a trolley problem, but similar to the trolley problem in terms of giving the characters more than just, he's evil, go kill him. Or they're bad, go stop them. Like, I want to give them reasons to really think about what they're doing and why, because, again, if you don't ask why the bad guy's doing it, then why aren't you asking why, if you're not going to ask why they're doing it, then why are you trying to stop them? Like, that's the approach I do. Like, when I'm coming up with a character and a concept, it's like, I look at it from the point of view of, if I'm not going to try to figure out why things are happening, why is my character bothering? Just because I heard it was a bad thing. Like, I'm much more interested in, I like the character that right before the BBEG, dies or escapes or is captured for good. I like that bad guy who just goes up to him and just holds him, up by the throat and just like, why? Just wants to know, why did you do it? It's like, that's my biggest thing, right? That's the kind of character I am. If I was a superhero, I'd be the one demanding the idea and not accepting that it's just because they're crazy. Let's see. Funny part is if anyone in the party also has a personal vendetta against... Funny part is, anyone else in the party also has a personal vendetta against dwarves, they might actually help the Necromancer in ruining the... Oh, yeah, that would be... If you definitely kind of fall into that concept of like, oh wait, you're actually trying to do something that I want to follow through with, like, hell yeah. I have NPCs or, not necessarily BBEGs, but like I do have like enemies that will try to recruit the party occasionally. Like, do something like that where it's like, once they can find something similar, they'll actually just straight up try to recruit them and see if they can turn the party's, like, direction of the campaign. That's always fun to do. If you haven't tried that, try to make an NPC or an enemy or a BBEG that's really, really relatable to all the characters and see if you can actually flip the entire script. Make the entire party think that this whole thing was about stopping this guy, and at the very end, give him an honest-to-God 50-50 option of, yeah, you can try to stop me, or you can join me, and then have a whole other campaign ready that's them doing the bidding. And you could write it to where all the things that they were doing to stop him or all the good that they were doing going against him, now they're going to slowly undo. So at first it's like some benign stuff. They don't think it's that evil, but then you like have them go do something, and then afterwards they realize they're like undoing all of the good that they had previously. It would be a really cool concept. I like playing with stuff like that. Biggest problem for me is I never get to see it all the way through because most of my gaming sessions don't go that far, or my characters decide to go, oh, what's that over there? But yeah, these are gaming things that I like to think about. Anyway, let's get into these home rules. It's getting late. I don't even think I'm going to be able to get through all of this, damn it. We're already at an hour and a half. But I will keep going over this. I do really like going over this old Discord. It's been a long time. In other words, branching path of the campaign. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what it is. It's just another branching path, and that's the best and worst part about my realm. Is that there's a path every direction, and if there isn't one, you can forge one if you want it. All right, house rules for the orc. So, below are a set of house rules to get familiar with. These are things that, some of these are brought back from how I game normally in my second edition role, or in my second edition campaigns, but and some of these only apply to this Discord. So, stat checks. A 20 is always a critical success. A 1 is always a critical failure on the die, only not including negatives, bonuses, blah, blah, blah. So if you roll a 15, but you have a +5, that does not equal a 20, does not equal a guaranteed critical success. And if you have a -2 to your roll and you roll a 3, that is not a negative, or that is not a critical failure. The reason I like doing this, and I know it's not really a D&D standard, I know it's kind of more, it's kind of like the free parking rule, I like to call it. If anyone's familiar with Monopoly and, you know, how free parking, at least when I grew up, free parking meant that you can take all of the stuff that was, you know, given in like, on certain squares we had to give money. If it didn't go to the bank, if it was like interest payments went into the middle of the board, you landed on free parking, you get all the money in the middle. That was a house rule. I didn't know that was a house rule. I thought that was just how you played Monopoly until I finally met someone, played Monopoly with them, and they were like, what the fuck are you talking about? Then we busted out the rule book because no, I knew the rules. I was absolutely fucking wrong when we read the rule book because no, that is not part of the rules. That was just something I was told and I didn't know that. So this is kind of like that whole thing where that you know, I like the critical success and the critical failure because it does add that dynamicism and it does happen. Like moments like that of pure genius and moments of utter failure do happen, and it's just makes the game more fun and it makes it more balanced, in my opinion, because you don't always have to make it mean the ultimate extreme. An ultimate, you know, a critical failure doesn't have to mean your character is always going to lose their weapon or hit themselves, but it will mean that more than you missed. And I do think that matters for gameplay, for role-playing, and it makes people think a little bit more about what they want to do because everything has a potential consequence. Let's see. Cosmic, what if you have a -2 and roll a 2 for a total of 0? For that particular case, like if you're going like, let's say, I'm trying to think of a good example of when you could have a -2 and then get a 0, because essentially, depending upon, let's see, other than damage, I mean, rolling to hit maybe, you could probably roll to hit for that. I don't know if you're joking with me or if you're actually being serious. I don't know. I'm not really good with satire a lot of the time. A lot of the time I will take it literally. So if you can provide me an example, I would. If you're just messing with me, then good job. You got me. A skill check using a character's dump stat. Okay. Roll a 2, have a -2, so you're going to get a 0. Essentially with like a stat check, I don't know if I really would go into the 0 at that point. I mean, if you rolled so low and had a negative that would take you that way, it wouldn't be the same as a critical failure. But actually, I'm glad you brought that up. So it would not be the same thing as a critical failure. But I will say this. The way that I do dice rolls, again, not in particularly this, but when I normally do dice rolls in my normal game, you know, like in-person gaming, I like to roll when it comes to stat checks. I like let's say you're doing like an intelligence check. If your intelligence is 14, I like the rule. My kind of rule is you roll, as long as you don't roll over, you pass, right? The idea is that you have to roll that or under. But my particular rule of thumb is the closer you are to your number, the better it turns out. So not only, I don't like just stat rolls being a pass-fail all the time. A lot of my stat rolls will be like on a range. So if you're trying to roll, like let's say a strength, and your strength is 15, and you roll a 14, you're basically going to just get to do whatever you wanted to do because you perfectly utilized your strength. If you roll, say, an 8 or a 7, technically, you're still going to be able to do what you wanted, but either descriptive wise or the outcome may not be entirely what you wanted. And then let's say if you roll a 2 or a 3 and you have that negative, you're not going to pull it off, and maybe or you do pull it off, but something very negative happens. Like an unintended consequence. So I like the scale concept. I like having it on this kind of scaling system so I can better make the situation work for what the characters are actually doing and not just what they've said they're going to do. So in that example, it would affect you because it is on the sliding scale, so it would scale you down a lot more, especially with that penalty. And that would also help me. Like if you rolled a 2 and then had a -3, so you'd technically be negative, I would be able to use those details to better describe why you didn't do it and why you maybe have made a mistake and actually made the situation worse. But a critical failure I look at critical failures as going to be more as something negative will happen. It doesn't have to be the most extreme negative, but negative there are consequences to a critical failure, but a very low roll is less desirable than a higher roll, but not quite the same, if that's making sense. It's better if I have examples. I wasn't prepared with anything off the top of my head, so I can't really remember a specific key example of when this came into effect directly. But I would say if you're in combat and you try to attack someone with a -1, if you roll and have a negative to your attack and you just roll really low, not only are you going to miss them, but maybe you've stumbled and you would take a knee, not really prone, but you'd take a knee, or your back's to them momentarily. Maybe they'll get advantage. Like there might be something, but if you rolled a negative, or if you rolled a 1, if you did a critical failure, you're probably dropping your weapon. You're breaking your weapon. If you're using a bow and you really just crit fail, you may break the bow. Crit failing, really tragically, something bad happens. Whereas if you just roll really low, you're just not going to pull off what you want, and then you might have some minor consequence or just some undesirable effect. Maybe a barbarian wanting to tame an animal rather than kill it. Roll animal handling, but he has a -2 or worse mod, and the roll is super low, making a total of 0 or even negative. Perfect. Okay. So in that particular case, if you're trying to do an animal handling, a crit fail with animal handling would probably harm the animal, either cause the animal to attack or, in the worst case, kill it. Like if it's a bunny, yeah. A -1 would or a crit fail would kill a bunny for a barbarian trying to animal handle. A very low roll might break its foot. Won't kill it, and you could still fix the situation. That's still a solvable situation. Maybe you now heal the bunny and now it's a familiar. But the difference would be in your situation, a low roll with a really big modifier. Like a low roll may just scare the bunny away, but that low roll with the modifier may hurt the bunny, and a crit fail would kill the bunny, if that makes a little bit more sense in terms of that hierarchy. What if a negative roll happens on something like a saving throw? In the Monday group, before I joined as a player had a -3 in charisma, which under the effects of Bane was under the effects of Bane and rolls low. Against a possession effect, charisma save, they got a -3 overall. Okay, so I have not run into that, but I would, just off the top of my head, in certain situations, I would almost, because in a save, I would almost say that it's, again, if you're going to crit fail, that's really going to have some negative effects. I would say if in those cases, there may be some situations where I would, again, it's either just rolling a 2, or I might push that bound between a negative. So in that particular case, rolls against possession, they have a -3. Maybe they like the feeling. So it's not a complete negative and you get, just completely dominated, but maybe because you got a negative, maybe you don't want to fight it, or maybe fighting it doesn't feel as good as just letting it happen. So maybe you're more susceptible. And I think that's what I would do. Yes, your questions are making me think, and I love it. This is honestly 100% why I switched from YouTube to Twitch, is because I love talking about D&D, but I'm not as organized. I don't do the scripts. I'm not as good as a lot of other D&D people, which is why I'm having things like my Discord up, because it's prompting me to think about things, because that's what I do best at. I do best gaming while I'm gaming. And stuff like this is why I went over to Twitch, because you guys are really going to help fuel me and think of these things. Yes, I'm not getting what I want done. I'm not getting onto, my Discord right now, but that's fine because this is going to be able to be here any other time. But these questions, these are what I really want from a Twitch chat, is I want to be able to interact with you guys because you give me the ability to think about my realm in ways that I haven't yet for this stream. Negative rolled versus a bard against being charmed. Oh, he roleplayed the potential. Yeah. And that's where again, all of my approach is always trying to make the best situation for me and the players and the story. I really want everybody to have fun, whether it pisses them off or not. At the end of the day, I still want them to have a good time. And yeah, I would say that I haven't run into something like that where negative modifiers bring you into the negative, but I would say that, yeah, there's going to have to be something a little bit special if that were really to happen. And in that particular case, that's very specific, right? He has a very low charisma, so he already has a big modifier drop. And on top of that, he rolled low. Like, in that case, absolutely, I would do something normal than just someone rolling low, because that's not going to happen very often. And you want it to stand out, whether that's good or bad. You want it to stand out because I like moments like that standing out, not because I want the bad moments to stand out for my players. I want the good and the bad, the ones that are the outliers. I don't want everyone to come to my game with an expectation of, yep, I know exactly what's going to happen today. He's going to give us some dialogue, then we're going to talk to an NPC, and now we're going to have a battle, and then at the end, we're going to go shopping. Like, I don't want to be that DM. I want to be that DM that when you get there, everything feels fresh because we're working together to build that story. And those are those moments where you have the opportunity to just give the player something that they haven't seen before, or try something that you've been wanting to try and you just haven't figured out an opportunity to do it yet. So boom, you can throw in a little extra, hey, you have a negative roll. No, you like that feeling. You may actually want that. And then at that point, if they get another chance to defend against it, maybe later I'll be like, hey, because you liked that feeling, maybe in the future, and maybe this could be a thing. Maybe if he just fails so hard or it's a perfect situation, maybe what I would do is, okay, you failed that one, but because you were in the negative, you kind of liked it. So in the future, if that spell happens on that character again, maybe I would make them roll percentiles or just flip a coin and be like, you have a 50-50 chance on whether or not you want to fight this. And maybe that's it. Maybe that's now a character trait of theirs. Because I've done that where super good, awesome things like crit successes and crit failures have become character traits because of the situation. Happened to my wife. We were just role playing, having some fun. She was going shopping and she wanted to try she's interested in what I create. So she's just like, I want to go shopping for food. And I'm like, cool. She's like, I want chocolates. And I'm like, okay, you can find a chocolate maker. And she's like, what do they have? And I just started making stuff. Like, she just wanted to just see what I would come up with. So I came up with all these treats, and she's like, I just buy them all. And I'm like, okay, you have a bit of energy. She's like, I want to try them and I want to see what I like. So she came up with this all on her own, but she's sitting there and she tries one. I describe what it is, and then she makes a dice roll for her character on whether or not her character likes it. And there was one where she rolled so low, she spat it out. She said, no, what is that? And it's funny because I think it was like, what was it? It was like, it was like chocolate and it's like chocolate and coconut. So like she had a coconut treat and she rolled really high and liked it. She had a chocolate treat. She had rolled really high and liked it. Then she had this coconut chocolate treat and she rolled really low and she said, what is that? When she found out, she was like, never again do these two touch. And so that's like kind of her character's thing where she just now has this aversion to those two particular flavors. So whenever she goes places, like it's fun when you can pull those things out, because that's not normally something the character would come up with, but because that was something that the dice decided, I kind of like doing that. So that's kind of where I would probably go with it is, yeah, if you're going to have those negatives, especially in those really unique situations, make them fun, make them unique, make them stand out, make them memorable. TLDR, the question we're asking, the difference between a negative total with a skill check versus saving throw. Yeah, and that's pretty much what it is for me, a critical failure will absolutely come with a detrimental effect of some degree. A negative, it's not going to be as much of a degree, but low and negative rolls are on that sliding scale. And the further you are away from the desired number you want to roll, the worse the outcome is going to be. But it may not be a total loss. It's going to be something that sucks, but is probably redeemable. Whereas a crit failure, you're not redeeming that, right? Yeah, Okay. One more example, and then we're gonna move on. So one more example would be like, let's say you're firing a bow. A normal roll would hit. A low roll would miss. A negative roll would maybe not just miss, but maybe you like break the arrow. So no big deal. You missed. Your arrow is broken. So you can't retrieve that one. So small thing. But if you roll a crit fail, maybe you broke the bow. Or maybe you damaged your arm because you didn't, move your arm in time, and now you have a negative for the next couple rounds because your arm hurts. Like those would be the sliding scale, where if you're going to go into the negative, you're going to have something that's worse than just missing, but it's not going to be to such a detrimental effect that it's going to have any long lasting. Kind of like the barbarian with the rabbit. You might break its foot, but hey, you may end up with a familiar or a pet at the end of it if you bring it back, heal it. But those are the things that I like to do. I like to keep it dynamic and have fun. My Wednesday group played yesterday, and I am happy to say that we leveled up to 12. Very nice. The DM uses the milestone system rather than XP per kill. My character, being a wizard, bard, multiclass, picked to level up to bard 4. Picked ASI and did a +2 buff to charisma, which does a lot for my character. Hopefully no more negatives. All right, let's go. More house rules. Let's finish up the house rules, and then I will probably start calling it after that because we've already been going for 2 hours, and my dinner's almost here. So percentile rolls. So percentile rolls. When it comes to that, pretty simple. They're going to be used in different situations. I will use them both in for just decision making, and other times I will use them for very specific scenarios. So there are magic numbers. What this means. That's all there is. What I tell my players, most of my veteran players, they all know the magic numbers, but when it comes to percentile rolls, there are magic numbers in my percentile rolling because I like that. I like always adding kind of like, the criticals. I like adding things that make it more dynamic. So my favorite number is 3. So 3 and 33 are magic numbers. 3 is kind of like one of those ot3, if you're rolling on percentiles. ot3 is just one of those kind of diamond in the rough, kind of on the extreme side of things. So it's usually a good roll, not necessarily a crit success, but it's usually a positive favor, for them, because it's like, hey, that's my number. I might make this a little bit better for you. Not every time you roll percentiles is a 3 going to do that, but depending upon the roll, depending on the situation, a 3 is one of the magic numbers. Alternatively, 33 is also another magic number. This is like my mischief number. If you roll a 33 on most particular percentile rolls, especially if it's a decision roll. So a lot of this really more or less depends on either decision rolls or when you're trying to attempt something. But if it's like a decision roll, especially if I'm trying to decide something, 33 just means that I get to kind of put my own little spin on it. It just means that I get to do things in my favor a little bit more. So that's kind of my number. 33 pushes it in my favor. 3 just kind of pushes it in the general favor of, that's a good roll. I'm gonna have fun with this and make everybody happy. Now, since I have a number that pushes it in my favor, and then a number that pushes it in everyone's favor, I gotta have a number that pushes it in the player's favor. So my DM also did this, but at the same time, really looking at it, I'm not really going to consider this something I stole from them, just because I think it's just too common to have this as a special number. But the player number, of course, would be 69. So any 69, 99% of the time, if the player rolls 69, that pretty much is like a crit success. I treat it in terms of the percentile roll realm as a crit success 99.9% of the time. It's very few situations where it doesn't really apply, like if the roll is just kind of like a high-low, like I just want a yes or no answer and I just need to decide. But if there's something along it where they have like a 10% chance, so they need to roll 90 to 100 or 1 to 10, depending on if they choose high or low, but a 69 would negate that because boom, that's like a crit success. So yeah, magic numbers, they exist, pretty much just the 3 of them, and then I hate 50. I hate pretty much like 47 to 53, especially if I'm needing a decision on something. I don't even just like being that close. I like a good decision. So it's like if it's within like 3 of 50, I try to just have it re-rolled because I don't like it. Let's see. Spell save DC is 18 with a 10 plus 10 to hit for both my wizard and my bard spells. When we get to level 13, do the proficiency bonus going to plus 5. Spell save DC and spell attack bonus will have gotten up. Will got up again next level. DC 1911 to hit for both. Yeah, that's... I'm just like... It's been a long time since I've had a higher than 10th level gaming session. So I'm trying to just remember, like, yeah, that does sound about right. It's just, man, it's been a while since I've had a level 10 plus gaming session. Man, those were the good old days. Honestly, I will say this, though. Honestly, as much as it is to have a really high level character, I actually really like... playing low levels. I love playing high levels. It's going to be big badass, but I've always found that playing low levels makes you more creative because it makes you use more of the tools at your disposal instead of having just, you know, the go-tos. That's the one thing that I've always learned with myself is I eventually get to a character build where I tend to be repetitious and I tend to do a lot of the same things. But when I'm a lower level, I tend to be more creative because I don't have all of the big power. I have to utilize my surroundings more. So, yeah, I need to run a higher level campaign soon. My characters are getting... I mean, surprisingly enough, for as long as my characters have been gaming in my realm, they're actually not that high a level character, but the progression makes more sense. Like, I don't do per kill XP. My XP happens, and it doesn't happen after every gaming session. It happens over time in the realm, in sense of like we sit down after a while. We'll recap a lot of the stuff that's happened. We'll recap the fights, and I will build the XP profile based on the actions they've taken, the enemies they've killed, the stuff that they found out, anything special or extra they've done, anything that made them stand out. And I give group XP, so if it's a party, everyone gets to divide the group XP equally. I give personal XP for situations because everyone's solo gaming, so I give solo XP to everybody who got their own little stuff. And then, of course, I don't really do like treasures and stuff like that. That's all in-game, so I don't really like level up treasure or anything else like that. And I'm always on the fence on whether or not like gold and stuff should equate to XP. My DM did that for a while. I don't really do an equal equation to you got this much gold, so you get this much XP. I add that into the personal and the group XPs based on, like, if they've done really, really well and got really, really good loot, I will give them more XP, but I don't really necessarily force it upon, like, the specific amount because it's too much to, like, divvy up and everything. So it's just more of we do that after it makes more sense that they're done. Like, I don't necessarily say like they have to reach a certain benchmark before I'll let them level up, but it's like if you've been playing and it's been like 5 gaming sessions and you haven't really done anything, we're not going to level up. Like if you've just sat in a bar and it's been 5 gaming sessions, it doesn't matter. It's been 5 gaming sessions. You've just been at a bar. Unless you're like, you spent like 5 weeks in game at that bar learning about lore and doing all this really crazy stuff that would help like achieve something, that's not going to do much. But I also don't want you to just like, oh, we played one gaming session, we killed a whole bunch of stuff, I want to level up. It's like, that doesn't make much sense though, because, you know, your character needs to have time to adapt, think about what they've learned, think about all of those things, find someone, if they want to learn something new, they have to find a trainer. So instead of sitting down and being like, okay, you're going to spend the next 2 weeks in game doing this, it's more like when it would make sense in the process of these characters' lives to level up, we do. And what's nice about that is some of that stuff isn't necessarily like, oh, they just woke up one day and boom, they can do all these new things. The idea is that the reason I don't do these like scheduled level up sessions is because I am allowing for the idea that these characters are actively training, actively trying to level themselves up. The level up session is just to kind of get the paperwork up to date. And when it would make sense, like I'm not going to have them go 5, 6, 7 battles when they deserve to have extra, attacks and extra bonuses and feats. But they might go 2 or 3 battles if it makes sense for the storyline and if it would make sense that they haven't really had a need or a reason to level up yet. So a lot of it's story-based and a lot of it is just what makes sense for what they're doing, because I also don't want them to level up too fast and I don't want them to level up too slow. So we kind of just make it make sense for the progress of the game. So feel free to take my idea for the Dead God Dungeon and the city that has hollowed out weapon God wants wielded in life. Maybe a temporary con buff from all the alcohol they drink in those 5 sessions at the bar. Actually, so we'll get in. I actually do have a drinking game built into this Discord. I actually did a code for a drinking game that was really fun. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. I did a lot of cool things like that. But I'm gonna continue to think that this whole God body cave weapon, I'm going to be thinking about this a lot. Believe me, I won't necessarily steal it, but if something in my realm pops up that is definitely inspired by it, I will let you know, because it sounds so cool. I would love to do, I don't necessarily like a one shot, but I would love to like run through that and just explore and just, yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. So let's get back to these house rules. So other than percentile rolls having magic numbers, there is a little bit here. So if rolling dynamic percentiles, so chance to succeed, like in RP or something, right? The player rolling may call high or low for success. So if this is a situation where it's like, hey, can I do this? And I'm like, okay, rolling percentiles, you have a 10% chance. The player gets to call high or low. And essentially that means that if they call high, that means that their 10% chance is in the higher end of the percentile. So this is for characters who like to roll high numbers, low numbers, or characters who like to control the dice, if you believe in that thing. I've always been on the fence on that. It's a weird. I'm in a weird relationship with the metaphysical sometimes, but the idea that I do is I want the player to feel like they have the most power and that they have the situation and they have the choice. So if they're feeling lucky and they feel like they're going to be rolling high, whether or not that they made that dice roll high or they want to, or again, if we're just rolling, since we're rolling on Discord, it doesn't really matter. But the idea is they get to choose it, and that is the percentile that they hit. So if it's a 10% chance and they roll high, or they say high, they have to get between 90 and 100. If they say low, they have to get between 1 and 10. That's theirs. This only happens with dynamic rolls. It doesn't work with things like that are already stated that have to have a certain way, or if there's a certain rule in the book that has you roll percentiles for a certain way. This is only for situations where I'm like, hey, you have a 10% chance to do this. Do you want high or low? And then they roll it. Point system. So I have a couple different points that I give out. So inspiration, of course, this is because I don't normally give inspiration like in my second edition campaigns. I give different things, but I wanted to keep things a little bit consistent with fifth edition. So inspiration, earned with RP, clever thinking, unique actions, etc. Basically, it's an award for making the gaming session better in some way, whether it's pushing the party forward or just doing something that really makes it memorable or really just wows me. I award that. If you have inspiration, you can expend it when you make an attack roll, saving roll, or an ability check. Spending your inspiration gives you an advantage on that roll. You must state the use of the inspiration before making the roll, and there is a code that you can track your inspiration points and usage of them. DM points. Now, DM points are something that was inspired by my DM. Thought it was a fantastic concept, and I mean, hell, it's really good. It's basically similar to an inspiration point from the D&D rule set. It's like it just works a little bit differently. So with DM points, they're earned when impressing the DM. Essentially, this could be anything, but this is just really when I feel like something deserves recognition. This is something that I give them. So when inspiration, it's basically DM points are similar to inspiration. They can be used to re-roll any roll. Now, this is not necessarily exactly how it works in my normal game. Normally, it's you can adjust a roll by like however many points you purchase with. You can adjust a roll by a certain amount. But I wanted this to essentially kind of be a little bit like inspiration and be a little bit different for the Discord, because it's going to be a lot easier than trying to add pluses and minuses to rolls in the Discord bot. It was just going to be a lot easier to let them re-roll things. So basically, DM point means you can re-roll any roll. Any roll, doesn't matter. You don't like it, you're like, nah, undo that. I'm using my DM point. You can use DM point after a roll has been made. So you don't have to call it beforehand. You can just make a roll and you're like, no, that ain't happening. And then DM points are character specific. So if you get a DM point, that DM point has to be used with that particular character that got it. So if you have 5 characters and one of them gets a DM point, that DM point is locked to that character use. Now, DM wishes, not to be confused with the in-game wish spell or similar. Basically, this is not at all to do with the in-game stuff. This is something, again, inspired by my DM. Loved it so much, I wanted to provide this to my gamers because it's just a cool concept and another way to recognize players and acknowledge them when they do really cool things. So wishes are granted for special occasions only. This isn't, you can't just come up with some really cool thing and you're just going to get this. This is very, very specific. So players will receive a wish upon their 1-year anniversary gaming with me. So if you've gamed with me for at least a year, and I don't just mean you've gamed once or twice and then a year has passed, but if you regularly game with me, it doesn't, even if you just game every couple months, but if you regularly game with me and you've stuck around for a year, boom, you get a DM point. That's just basically thanking you for being in my realm. Thank you for gaming with me. Thank you for making me better. And I want to give you a bonus because you've earned it. On the player's birthday. So every single time a player of mine who's an active gamer has a birthday, they get a DM point for every year they've been gaming with me. So those just keep on racking up if you don't use them. And when going above and beyond according to the DM. So again, this is not like saying something cool or having a cool cutscene, but if you go above and beyond, if you create a class for me or give me an idea that really makes my realm better, if you do something that truly enhances the gaming scene or enhances the gaming situation for the whole party, yes, you're gonna. But again, this is usually, so far, no one has gotten a DM wish outside of their 1-year anniversary and their birthday. Let's put it that way. After over 8 years of being a DM, I have never given a DM wish to anyone outside of their birthday or their 1 year. Birthday DM point, interesting. I find it really fun. It's really funny. All of my gamers that have gamed with me for years, none of them have used a wish. My wife has like 7 at this point. She has like 7 wishes stacked up, and it's fucking terrifying. Because I use the same rule set as my DM did for how to use these wishes. Because these wishes are not... let me just finish this real quick. So the player are going above and beyond. Wishes must be submitted in writing, not taken on the spot wishes. So basically, this has to be premeditated, and you have to submit it to me so I can actually think it through, understand what you're asking, gives me more time, and it gives me an opportunity not just to hear it, but actually digest it. It must contain only one focus. This is actually something that my DM taught me about how to handle wishes, but things like, because, one wish per one topic. So, and with commas are all examples of wish stacking. So if you're like, I want a sword that does 10d damage and does 1d6 fire damage. Well, that's 2 wishes. Do you want the 1d8 or did you want it to do 1d6 fire damage? Or an extra 1d8 plus an extra 1, so all of those things, anytime you basically put an additional aspect, that would be an additional wish. So that's what wish stacking is, which can make it very dangerous, because normally a wish is pretty straightforward. I want this, or I wish for. But when you have multiple wishes, the ability to sit there and just create whatever the fuck you want, and you can just be like, and this, and that, comma, that, it gets dangerous. And my wife, I think, has the most right now, and it's kind of scary, but she hasn't used them yet. And no one else has used them. What if it's the DM's birthday, not the players? Well, surprisingly enough, my birthday is tomorrow, and I don't really know how to reward myself with DM points because I get to do whatever the fuck I want. But I've never DM'd on my birthday. I've never actually had a gaming session on my birthday, so I don't know if I would do something special for that. But yeah, I think something like that is really fun because, again, it rewards the players for being loyal. And I don't mean loyal as in they don't game with anybody else, but it rewards the players for giving you the patience to be a better DM and for helping you develop your skill sets. And we all know that even the best DMs aren't always the easiest to handle, and they're not always going to be the funnest at every gaming session. So the fact that you've stuck around that long, I think it's just an easy way to give them something. And it's kind of like, instead of trying to come up with something, this is a way to where let them pick their own, the gift. If they've been really wanting something, this is an opportunity. Or if they're going to be around for a while, let them stack them up and then finally just all at once go all out. But yeah, that's why I say it's not on the spot, because these can get dangerous if you can just willy-nilly in the middle of a gaming session just drop a wish. But I mean, granted, if you submit it in writing in the middle of a gaming session, I'll take it into consideration. I'm not saying I won't listen to my own rules, but the idea is it's not to let you just sit there and be like, oh, I wish that didn't happen. Like, what do you mean? Like, write that shit down. Because I don't want to deal with all, I want to make sure that it's not, these are meant to be important. These are meant to be special. I don't want people just to throw them away on a whim just because they can, because I don't think it's fair. I think it's too powerful to be thrown away, but I think it's also why most of my players haven't used them and abused them yet, because they're, they're respectful of that. Fun fact, my birthday is on September 20th, and it is on a Wednesday. As long as there are no delays, it will line up with the Wednesday group I play in. Interesting. If you're going to play on your birthday, I'm trying to think, what can you do special wise? I mean, obviously you don't want to do anything that would be like too harmful to the gaming group, but like, because I'm trying to think of as a DM, it's like you don't want to give like, all of the NPCs bonuses and things like that. Now, granted, if you're not in the middle of a gaming session, you could make it based around the birthday of like a famous NPC or a big NPC. And then you could just, if they don't know it's your birthday, that would be kind of a funny reveal. But if they do know it's your birthday, it could just be part of the whole thing. It could just be they're going to a birthday for some really important person, and instead of doing real gifts in real life, maybe they have to play it out where it's like you're gonna go, where are you gonna get this really important king, or this really important mage's birthday? Like, make it a whole thing where they have to like actually go and find the perfect gift. And I don't know. That's probably what I would do. I would probably make it more of a themed thing. If I was gonna play on my birthday, I would kind of theme it towards making them kind of essentially act out like it is your birthday, but in game. But yeah, that's how I do my specialty points. So you have your normal inspiration, you have your DM points, and your DM wishes. And yeah, it's I don't really know, like, DM point, again, so in my realm, normally the DM point's a little bit different because it allows you to adjust a roll by a certain amount, and normally I like that better because inspiration and being able to re-roll something and have an advantage on a roll, it's a little bit weird because inspiration's technically better because I'd rather have advantage and choose which one and have the higher one, but being able to re-roll something isn't as good, I guess. Like, I don't know. They're basically the same thing. Let's face it. They're basically the same thing. But that's just because, again, I altered the way I do DM points for this particular Discord. Normally, if you have a stack of DM points, you can use usually up to 3 at a time to adjust any dice roll. That's normally the rule I have. So if you roll and, and what it does is it doesn't just add it to the roll, but you can essentially use it to change the die. So if you roll a 17 and you use it, not only does your 17 become a 20, you actually physically change the die to a 20. That's why DM points are so important, because they don't just add a point to the roll one way or another, and you can use them both ways. They're really versatile. So if you have a strength of 16 and you wanted to roll to do something and you rolled a 17 and you aren't going to do it, you can use a DM point to knock that down a notch and nail it, and get the exact strength, and then you can have exactly what you want. So that's why DM points are normally much more powerful, because they allow you to alter a roll more dynamically in the situation that makes sense, which is why you want to earn them and why you want to store them. In this, they're kind of dumb. Like, honestly, I don't even like now that I'm rereading this again, it was 3 years ago. I'm sure it made sense in my head, but really re-rolling, it's just inspiration. But let's face it, I just basically turn it into inspiration, but it's because trying to have people alter a roll by a certain number would be too hard with the bot, so I got rid of that roll. But that's normally how I do DM points. They're a lot more special. They're a lot more powerful because being able to change it, like when we were talking about those magic numbers with percentile rolls, that's where DM points really come into success. If you roll a 70, you can spend a DM point and get that guaranteed, crit success. Let's see. For me, I have a ring in mind with a homebrew feature, double or nothing. When casting a spell that targets a single creature and it based on a saving throw, if the creature fails a saving throw, they can take double the normal damage. If the creature succeeds, they take 0 damage. It is locked being single target and saving throw type spell. Interesting. So instead of taking half damage, so basically all double or nothing. That's dope. That's a good way to think about that. Yeah, either just if they fail, they max it out, and if they save, they take nothing. Like that's dope. I like that. If you feel that's too powerful, I mean, it still requires them to fail, so it's actually not that unbalanced. But if you want it to be like any other way, maybe once a target's, like chosen, you can't, like, maybe it's harder to cast magic on any other target until either the target, the original target dies, or is so far away, like as in they had to flee or escape, or the combat ended and they walked away. But I don't know if that's too powerful. I think that double or nothing is awesome. How many charges though? I would say that you'd probably want to limit the amount of times you can use it in a day, because in some situations, I mean, it doesn't really benefit you to spam it, because 0 damage, 50 chance of 0 damage isn't as good as half damage. But wait, what? Oh, no. I'm dumb. You already said that because it's a single. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I'd be really interested to know if you have anything like charges for a day or anything, or if it's just unlimited use, because that's really interesting. Oh my god, I have so many. Okay, we got to get through these because I don't know if my food's here. My food here is not here yet. Okay, pizza's on the way. I have a few more minutes. Okay, so we can continue. So, usable resources outside of provided books. So, this is just a kind of thing for house rules. If any of my character or any of my players wanted to quick references on specifically what this Discord and this bot is using, D&D Beyond, the 5e Wiki, which is where I got the homebrew stuff, and then please consult with me outside of the... Basically, it was... I gave them all of the 5e standards. These were the two areas that I was okay with them looking around on their own, because I kind of knew most of what was in here on these two websites, and I'm like, look, if you get something from these two websites, I'm more likely going to be okay with it, or at least I can quickly refer it. If you want to use anything outside of these references, you needed to talk to me, because I don't have easy access to them, and I just don't want to approve anything just based on their what they said. So just, again, additional information for them. AoE spells like Fireball and multi-targeting spells do not work with this feature because of the limited specific one use. Prefer limited use in a day. Prefer unlimited uses in a day. Okay. So they can really just... I mean, again, it does make sense because you do have the limiter of it's really based on that saving throw. I feel like it can get a little bit powerful, especially depending on what type of like magic they learn, because if you learn certain kind of magic with really difficult saving throws, that could be pretty OP. But... yeah, no, I love the double or nothing, though. It's such a great concept. I wish Kage was here. Kage would eat that up. He loves that shit. Scroll use. Okay, so this was one of those things that I added because there is, over the different editions, terminology changes, and so sometimes I just take things and I keep them because I like how they sound, so I like to just make sure that I clarify some things. So let's see, what do you say? It only works with spells that are saving throw and base, obvious and single target. That itself is limited enough, in my opinion. I don't disagree with you. I know, I mean, obviously, like everything, players will find a way to abuse it, but I don't think it is so abusable it requires a limitation. My mind just always goes to what could you balance it with if you had to. I think your best balancing would be limit how many times per day it could be used if you need a balancer. But again, it's pretty damn good the way it is. I think it's pretty damn good. I don't think it's that harsh. I don't think that it's easily abusable. It's just more of that. Is it the smartest thing would it be the smartest thing for a player to just try to steamroll everything by abusing it? But I guess that's also the point of playing the character. Like, if the character is that brash and that willing to just, waste their magic, let him. Why not? Can't really, I can see it being abused, but I can't really see it being a problem. You know what I mean? Like, that's that fine line. But yes, so scroll use. So this is just me trying to clarify some things because over the editions, there's been different standards, and this is one of those standards that I like to keep. So I like to make sure that I have a dividing understanding when we're talking in game. So scroll use. I have two different ways that you will come across a scroll. If you come across a standard scroll, it will come across in game. I will say scroll of blank. If you come across if you come across a scroll of XYZ, those will be considered standard scrolls and can be cast by anyone. For non-magic users, it will be an intelligence check with a DC of 10 plus the spell level to cast. So basically, normal spells doing what they are designed to do. Be all of the material components, everything that the spell needs is already contained inside the scroll. It just needs someone to activate it, and the activation is just reading it. So as long as you can read it, you can cast it. That's fine. Those are out there, standard scrolls. But if you come across one that is labeled a spell scroll, so spell scroll of XYZ, then these are going to be treated like spell scroll from the book. So, thus, if the spell is on your class's spell list, you can use an action to read the scroll and cast its spell without having to provide any of the spell's components. If the spell is on your class's spell list, but of a higher level than you can normally cast, you must make an ability check using your spell casting ability to determine whether you can cast it successfully. The DC equals 10 plus the spell's level. On a failed check, the spell disappears from the scroll with no other effect. If the spell is not on your class's spell list, it is unreadable. If the spell is not on your class's spell list, you are unable to cast the spell. So again, this is one of those situations where these are going to be higher level type spells. These are going to be a higher form or a different type of scroll magic. So I wanted to make that difference because there are a lot of situations where this does come in handy to have two different determinations for certain like key spells that you want to keep. And I also like having this because it allows for me to also keep control of things in an RP fashion. So in my realm, I like to, there's a lot of different controlling powers, and many different powers like to have certain controls of things. So those in the powers that be for magic, I like to keep certain things under wraps. So if there is a standard to where certain types of spells can only come out or only be done via spell scroll, whether that's policy, law, or divine intervention saying, hey, these spells cannot exist as a normal scroll, it has to be a spell scroll, then those are the ways that I can, those are the in-game reasons why these scrolls exist and why certain people just can't access them. They're usually made for a different purpose by a whole different type of being or person other than a mage just writing a spell that anybody can read. Let's see, what we got here? So works a spell. So Mind Spike, second level, is an example of a spell the feat would work with. You reach into the mind of one creature you can see. So there's your one creature. The target must make a wisdom saving throw. There's your saving throw. Or taking 3d8 psychic damage on a failed save, half as much on a successful save. On a failed save, you also always know the target's location until the spell ends, but only while the two of you are on the same plane of existence. While you have this knowledge, the target can't become hidden from you, and if it's invisible, it gains no benefit from that condition. So yeah, single target, has a saving throw, has damage that it can be doubled, and normally half damage, which go to 0 damage. Double or nothing, I really like. I think it works. Like I said, there's situations that could be like spammy with it, but I don't see it as such an issue that it will literally become a problem. It would really depend on who's using it. So it'd be a 6d8 if they failed their saves to defeats. Yeah, 6d8 would be easy. So I'm actually curious because I'm always wondering about people's concept of doubling damage, because there seems to be two schools of thought. Do you double the original damage rolled, or do you double the dice? Because in my opinion, it's really interesting to consider the alternative, like to really consider, like, is there a difference, right? Would there be really a difference of rolling 6d8 versus 3d8 and doubling that number? I've had this conversation with a couple people, but this is just one of those things. I like picking people's brains, especially other DMs, because this is one of those things where I want to know how you think. Like, how does how does that work? Is it easier because of the math? Do you find that it's easier because there's less just physical dice you have to roll? Is it better because you have more control? Like each individual dice could be something different versus one dice basically meaning two dice. Like, so I'm really curious. Like, so it seems like, would you have them do a 3d6 and then just double the number, or would you have them roll 6d8? I'm really curious because, I'm sorry, 3d8 or 6d8. Because yeah, that's just one of those weird things that I think every DM would approach differently. I think there's going to be two different schools of thought on which is more appropriate: double the dice or double the actual number rolled. I don't know. I think that I would do I think I would do double the number in terms of damage is doubled, because I look at, if you're adding dice, you're adding technically more opportunities, right? So if I roll 3 dice and they're all ones, that means that they're, they all become twos. But that's guaranteed that they're only ever going to be twos. Whereas if I roll 6 dice and roll 3 ones, I still have 3 more chances to roll a 6, or sorry, an 8 in this case. And in my perspective, that's way more powerful. Me being able to roll 3 more dice and possibly get 3 more 8s. That is way more powerful than I rolled by 3 ones, but I get to double that, right? So I'm in the camp that if I'm doubling damage, you do normal damage dice roll and then double the number you rolled. Because I feel like if you're adding dice is a bonus. It isn't just how much more you're doing. I feel like it skews it. And I could be wrong. I mean, technically there could be no difference if you really look at it, but that's my logic. My approach is that more dice technically give more chance, and I don't feel that's what double damage is meant to do. Let's see cosmic. Based on the double or nothing's wording, I would think roll the 3d8 and double the amount rolled. I'd hate to roll 6d8 and have the latter 3d8 be 111, even if the first I'd hate to roll 68 and have the latter 3d8 be 111, even if the first 3 was 888. Yeah, exactly. And that's the other aspect. If I'm going to roll 6 dice and I go 888, that's great if I get to double that, because that's phenomenal. But it's 16, 16, 16. Who doesn't want that? But you're right. If I just get to roll 3 more dice and I'm like 8, 8, 8, 1, 1, 1. So essentially what I really rolled was 3 9s. How did I double that? So, and again, that's exactly how I feel about it, where adding dice should be just like how the game treats it. It should be adding to the effect, right? So things like, sneak attack or adding poison to your blade, those things add a dice of damage, which is on top of everything else. I think when you're doubling damage, I think overall it helps the player better to double the lesser of the roll, or less rolls and double that than roll more. Then the double part of the feats is accurate. Exactly. 100% agree with you. I believe that if you're doubling damage, you roll the original dice. You don't just double the amount of dice. Now, granted, I could believe that there is an argument to be made for a feat or a bonus that lets you double your damage dice. So double the amount of dice you roll. That is a whole different feat. I think that is a whole different bonus. I agree with you 100%. I do not think the double or nothing, I don't think it fits that way, but I don't think it doesn't have its place. I absolutely believe there is a place out there for, if your damage roll is 3d8, I believe that there is a place for an ability to say now you get to roll 6d8. I just don't think calling that double damage is the right way to do it. Another fun topic, we're not going to get into this today, but another topic I want to bring up to other DMs is how people like to deal, like if you do crit, if you have crit successes, like crit damage. I've always been curious, do you do double damage? Do you do twice the amount of dice rolls? Because I've thought about this, specifically is when I do crit damage, do I double the damage that they would normally roll? Do I let them roll twice the amount of dice? Or do I just automatically do max damage? And then I've also thought about max double damage. Just if you roll crit, you automatically do max damage and then double it, or you automatically do max damage, or you get to double what you roll. I'm always really curious. We're not going to talk about that today, but maybe on Monday when I come back, or when Kage's in, we'll talk more about how people deal with like critical damage. All right, so that is how I do scrolls. Scrolls, 2 different types. It really makes more sense for some of the rules that I have overlapping from different editions, as well as it helps me in the realm describe and explain things more, because it's how everything's actually like built out. The best part is when Mind Spike specifically. It is a divination spell as divination wizard. When I use a higher level spell slot and regain an extended spell slot of a lower level, meaning using Mind Spike at 2nd level, I'd regain a level 1. That's fucking OP as shit. Holy crap. Damn, that's OP. Like, that's fucking dope. I could do some naughty things with that. Stop distracting me, damn it, with all your good commentary. Dragon marks. So this is something that I wanted to add in. It was something that one of my buddies who DMs, Dardass actually, he actually DMs a bit, and he introduced me to dragon marks, and I really liked them. So I wanted to add them into this one as another option. I didn't really think most of my players would do this, but I just thought it was really cool, and this is something that is also, because of this, is now adopted into my normal game. So my normal 2nd edition, I've adopted the dragon marks based off of the Unearthed Arcana dragon marks. And then a character may only have 1 dragon mark. That is rule number 1. Dragon marks can be obtained in only the following ways. So, number 1, what you got, Cosmic? But it only works with the divination spells, and there aren't that many there that are attacking focus, which I prefer. That also is a good balancing maneuver as well, because it does really make sure that you're being specific which you want to use it for. So I like that. I do like that. So dragon marks can only be contained in one of the following 3 ways. So way number 1, upon character creation, if you want a dragon mark, you can roll a D100. You have a 10% chance of starting with a dragon mark. This one is specifically 1 through 10. You do not get to choose high or low. 1 through 10 is all you get. So if you can roll a 1 through 10 on a D100 or percentile rolls, when you are creating your character, you may have a dragon mark of your choice. Option number 2, whenever you would forego an ability score increase to gain a feat, you may roll for a 30% chance of gaining a dragon mark instead. I didn't put instead, but it is instead. So you forego an ability stat increase and you forego a feat on a level up, and you have a 30% chance of gaining a dragon mark. 1 through 30, that cannot be changed, not high or low. If you do not obtain a dragon mark, you do not gain any feats. So this is one of those options where it's kind of one of those any times. I should have added in here, now that I'm thinking about it, I didn't, but now that I'm thinking about it now with a couple more years of experience, I would probably cap this at maybe like once every, well, I don't know. Actually, no, because if you want to try it at every time you level up, fine. For every level you level up, you have a 30% chance because you only have 1 dragon mark. So you can continue. So yeah, 30% chance any level up, but you have to forego the ability stat increase or a feat. So you have to be really dedicated to want to get that. And option number 3, after a traumatic event, you may petition the DM for an opportunity to release a hidden dragon mark. Now, this is really going to be specifically character specific. What a traumatic event classifies as is really dependent upon if the character believes that the event will be traumatic enough, and then they have to bring it to me, state their case on why they think this event was traumatic enough, and if it would bring out a dragon mark. And either if they make a hell of a case, I mean, if they come out and they say, here are all the reasons why I think this would have brought this out of me, and they nail it, they're just going to get it. They're, boom, have it. If it's pretty weak, but it makes sense, I'll let them roll for it. And if it just doesn't make any sense, and if I don't agree that it was traumatic enough, not going to have it. Let's see, Cosmic, what is the max amount of dragon marks a PC can have? So in this particular case, a character can only have 1 dragon mark in my Discord. In my normal campaign, you can have up to 2. But getting a second one requires a lot. It's not it's not just something that you can just have. It basically, first you have to get your first one, and then discovering if you have the ability to get a second one usually is something either based on whether I have written it into your backstory, or if something really interesting happens or divine intervention. There are ways to get a second dragon mark, but typically a natural way to get one, you're only going to get one, because it's either going to be through usually it's going to be through your blood lineage. So something has to pull it out. Either you were born with it and you have always had it, something brought it out of you like a traumatic event and you didn't know, but it like activated to help you. Or as you grow and learn, you may just stumble across abilities that you didn't know you had. But yeah, having more than one dragon mark is extremely rare. It can happen because in my realm, I really like to bend the rules and I really like to play with things. But it's just not normal. But I do like the idea of it. I like the idea of being able to have more than one. But it's not going to be for everybody. I wouldn't let any player have it just because you gotta, like, you don't have to be like a super veteran gamer in my realm, but you have to kind of know your way around how my realm works before I would let you play with stuff like that big. Just it's a lot, you know what I mean? It can be kind of OP after a while. But yes, in this particular setting, one per PC. In my normal setting, live, up to two, with extenuating circumstances. And then racial limitations. Dragon marks are limited to as per listed with one exception. If a dragon mark is granted by a traumatic event, the player may select any dragon mark without limitation. So that's the other interesting part, because if you're creating your character, you're going to have to go based off of what the dragon mark says you can have. So if you have limitations, you're going to only get the list. And if you try to do it through level up, the same thing, you're going to be limited to which ones you can. But if a traumatic event reveals it, that can be without limitation, anyone you choose, period, end of story, I don't care. And that is part of the reason why you can have a second one, is because of that. Because of a traumatic event can bring out a one that you would not normally have access to. That's kind of why I grant that secondary one, because that, to me, that just means that there is something more going on in the background with dragon marks than the average person understands. And that's kind of more for gaming lore. I mean, it's because I don't have campaigns and things, I like to put these like breadcrumbs out there to give my players reasons to go on adventure. If they find out that they can have a second dragon mark, but they don't know why they can have one, that is a whole type of campaign that they can go run just to find out that information. That to me is a lot more fun, because instead of telling everybody this is what you're going to do, you're going to go and find out what the dragon marks mean and find out why there can be two. Yeah, it will be fun. They'll enjoy the story. They'll be, be like, ooh, ah, but at the same time, it's not what they wanted. Unless someone says, I want to go find out why that is, it will be a cool story, but I'm much more interested in finding out what you want to know about my realm and the things that I've created. I want to know what kind of story you want to hear me tell, instead of me telling you, here's the story I want to tell you. Let's see. Next time you stream, I want to talk about some of the magic items I've created. I'm super creative with ideas. Double or nothing being a feat I made as an example. I normally do magic items. I would love to hear about magic items, especially if you have them on D&D Beyond. One thing I will be doing at least once a month is going in and rating those homebrews, kind of like going through them, figuring out what I would do. If you ever put one on D&D Beyond, I will love to do it on stream. I will blast it on here and we'll go through it. We'll talk about all the cool things about it. If I could use it and how I would use it. You don't like D&D Beyond. That's fair. It's not for everybody. I liked it. I got really into it because of this Discord and because of other Discords, because of the bot and because 5th edition really plays nicely with it. But I totally understand. I've tried to create things on there. It's not as fun, and it's kind of dry in my opinion. But yeah, next time I will be here on Monday, so come back on Monday if you are, or if not, next Thursday, and we will definitely talk about that. I'm really interested to hear what you have. Babakis, the other guy that comes in here, he's also making a TTRPG of his own, not really D&D specific, but making some of his own rules. Got to see some behind the scenes stuff while he was creating it on his stream. Ooh, so good. So like the whole dynamic of his gameplay is really, really interesting. Not combat focused. It's all diplomatic. It's all role play. It's all just really interesting. It's fascinating. Like the levels that he has and he's building in terms of what kind of classes you can play and what that means. Fantastic. What time on Monday? I have a dentist appointment that day. So right now I'm trying to. Originally, I wasn't supposed to have a schedule because I was just supposed to just turn the camera on, start talking whenever I felt like it. But because I'm on Twitch, I know a schedule is going to be the best. So right now, I'm trying to lock in Mondays and Thursdays, start time between 7 and 7:30, and then we go till about 9 or 10. Just depends on what the topic is and how long we go. Mondays, usually Kage will be in the studio with me, kind of my co-host at this point, not even a special guest anymore. And then Thursdays, it's pretty much just me. And I might hop in on Sundays occasionally. You might see me on here just making some content on Sundays if I have free time. But Mondays, Thursdays, 7 p.m. or between 7 and 7:30 is when I start. Pacific Standard Time. All right, so that was all the dragon marks. Let's get... Okay, we are almost done, and then I can go... My food's not here yet, so hopefully this will be good timing. Here we go. So ammo. Ammo, this is some housekeeping stuff because I've played around with this for a couple years on, I wonder what your co-host would think of Kage is going to lose his shit. If anyone's going to steal that idea, it is going to be him. I am hands down going to tell you that if that idea is going to be pilfered as is, he is going to love it. And that's, yes. Be here on Monday. Remind me to talk to him about that because I probably won't remember. But yeah, that I'm going to be thinking about that for the next couple of days on just the ideas of that. Because I love working with gods and divines and the different ways that they can interact with the world. But that is so unique. That is so, I've dealt with like divine corpses like in space and just floating around in other planes and in the astral realm. But that is just a whole different direction that I love it. I'm all about that. I want to game that realm. At least I want to like just explore it. But let's get into ammo. So ammo is some housekeeping stuff because I've played around with this for the last couple of years, especially depending on what edition I've tried or what edition is influencing my game at the moment. This one was mainly just because I like role-playing a lot of aspects of D&D in different scenarios, but I don't like doing them all the time. So there are some things that we gloss over, and then some things, a couple gaming sessions will go by and we'll gloss over stuff like eating, traveling, and then other gaming sessions that'll be like the main focus where it's like, okay, how are you guys eating? Because it just depends. I don't want every time they travel to have to think about all these little things. I mean, I like sometimes to take things for granted. Because, characters will get into routines. So sometimes I'll start players for a couple gaming sessions having to do certain routines. And then once they've proven to me, they're like, okay, you've done this like for 3 gaming sessions. I get it. Your character wants to do this all the time. You can stop telling me. I don't need to hear it every time. It bogs down gaming and you're tired of telling me. But, there are other times where it's like, it just depends on the situation. If you're going from one town to the next in an area that's not that big of a deal, why am I going to make this whole traveling plan? You're just going 2 days down the road in a very nice area. Whereas if you're going, in the wilderness, completely away from civilization, even for one night, yeah, that's going to be a lot more of an opportunity for things to happen. So with all of that said, when it comes to ammo, these are some housekeeping things I did to help with combat, help with the game flow, mainly on this Discord, because when we're gaming in person, I'm a little bit less lenient in terms of like ammo collection and stuff. But this is just mainly for when it comes to the Discord, we were trying to streamline a lot of things. So keep that in mind. But when it comes to ammo, when starting with non-magical ammunition, or any type of missile ammunition, so arrows, bolts, what have you, you do not need to track, gather, or replenish your ammunition. The reason I did this is because it's cheap. The game flow was going to be slowed down by it. And when it really comes down to it, like having to replace 3 arrows every time you went to a battle and come back and then have to go through the process. Like I have a shop like option. I over here, you can go into the shop, and again, we'll talk about this next time, but these are things that are meant to be done by the players with or without me or the other players around, because I want them to be able to play whenever they want to play. So having them every single time they went to a battle come back and buy 3 arrows is just not fun gameplay, especially when tracking 2 silver is just not necessary for certain levels of gameplay. Sometimes I'm really, really specific about money with some of my characters and players and their gaming sessions. And then other gaming sessions, it's just more of a thing in the background, mainly because my players don't use money that specifically. Like they usually are just frugal, they buy what they need and then they stock the rest up. So it's easier to say, yeah, you bought some rations, I don't need to care. You have, like, you just got 2,000 gold, from that king. Why am I worried about the, the penny rations that you have to fill your bags with? Like, it's kind of assumed that there's going to be upkeep. And so when I give out treasure, when I give out XP, all of that stuff is kind of taken into account, and I don't expect them to specifically count every dollar, because unless they want to do something very, very special, those small little upkeep items are just not that important for me. I'd much rather get into the bigger stuff, because again, a lot of this stuff is routine. So if you've gamed with me for more than a couple gaming sessions, you're no longer going to have to upkeep everything. Now, normally in a real gaming session, yes, every item you have to keep track of, because that's just the old school way of doing it. But for the purposes of this Discord, tracking ammo was not that big of a deal. So once you purchased your base ammo set, and again, think about the setting. They're not in a normal town. They're not adventuring. They're in a settlement. They're in an encampment of their own tribe, of their own people. They're going to be able to have things like that restocked to them for really the purposes of keeping the tribe going, not so much because someone needs money. So no ammo, non-magical ammunition was not tracked. Once you bought it and you had it and it was in your inventory, that was it. That was it. You had it. It was part of your inventory. It was just another weapon. Because again, the concept of, like, most of these guys were carrying 15, 20 arrows. None of them ever came close to running out. Ever, in any battle. And if they did, if it was just really an ongoing battle, eventually I may have cut them off. But in reality, there's just no reason to have them do all of the back end stuff just for a couple arrows. So, non-magical ammunition, once you bought it, you had it. When obtaining a new missile weapon or type of ammunition, you must spend the initial purchase cost of a standard set of ammunition for the weapon at normal cost. After that point, you do not need to track, gather, or replenish. So this basically means if you buy a bow and learn the skill to fire a bow and you buy one arrow, you have one arrow. But if you buy the bow and then buy a quiver of arrows, boom, we're done. You buy a bolt, a box of bolts. The idea is you stocked up, therefore you don't have to do it in the future. Just don't, I didn't let him just buy one and that was it. It's not magical, but the idea is that it's happening in the background. I'm not going to bother you to do it every single time, especially because we were playing a lot of tech space, so I didn't want it to be bogged down with just, I'm buying this. But magical ammunition was different. So all magical ammunition must be tracked, can be gathered unless otherwise stated by its description, and must be replenished at cost. When attacking using magical ammunition, use the ammo server snippet. Remember I said earlier, snippets are the things that you add in at the end of your attack commands for this particular bot. So if you were firing and you were using magical ammo, you would type in your command of, I'm attacking this person with this weapon, and then you would write ammo at the end, and it would automatically drop your ammo count for that. And then at the end of the battle, you can perform the collect ammo command and collect up to half your ammunition. And that was just an easy way instead of doing dice rolls. Because normally I would have you do dice rolls to see if you break it on the situation. But this is just, you get half of them back. The counter for magical ammo is ammo and will be created the first time you use the snippet, or you can create it with the following command. And basically, this is where you can just, it's a counter. So it'll just constantly have that counter. And then you can set the amount that you have every time you purchase some. Stealth checks during combat. This particular rule set is, again, just something where it's more of a house cleaning tip, just so we can kind of keep everything moving. So stealth checks during combat. When rolling a 19 or 20, so if I tell a character if they want to be stealthy and they are in combat and they want to go stealth, or if it's right before combat and they're trying to, be stealthy, if they roll a 19 or 20, that's it. You succeeded. Like, it's just, why bother? Why bother with this passive perception crap? It's not even a rule of cool. It's just, again, I don't normally do that. Normally, I play by the rules. Normally, you have to succeed your stealth and the enemy can't see you. But when it came to the Discord, it was just easier if they rolled a 19 or 20. Cool, you succeeded. Let's move on. Let's have fun. It's not normally a rule that I normally have, but it isn't something that's game breaking. It does really help out when you're just trying to get things to move along. And bag of holding survival, another house rule of mine. Within a standard bag of holding, survival time of any breathing creature is 2 hours. I don't remember exactly. I think I got this off of Crawford. I think Jeremy Crawford actually confirmed that the bag of holding in any instance where a creature that needs breath, the instance inside that bag of holding that they are contained in. I believe Jeremy Crawford confirmed it is only 2 hours. Don't quote me on that, though. I may have got that from somewhere else, but I'm pretty sure it's 2 hours. I think my DM even used to have it as like a day or a couple days. I don't even remember what he had it as, but I know that we used that a couple times to hide out in bags of holding. But I like 2 hours. It's not too breakable, but it does give you the option to use it if you want to. You know, sneak someone in or hide. You know, just something, right? Like it's an opportunity, but it does cut you off at that point. And then the last thing in the ingredients section is my 5e. I have a Google Drive for everybody that they can just go in and take a look at some things. I don't even think that Google Drive is up anymore. I should probably just delete that link. But yeah, it's just basically all it was just a couple links to books and stuff like that. And yeah, and that was pretty much everything for the welcoming. And then next time I'm on, Cosmic, if you're on, remind me to talk about your dead deity cave, and we will talk about that with Kage. And then maybe if I don't have another concept, maybe I'll continue going through this. I really liked this. I liked going into the past and kind of re-looking at this Discord. It's given me a lot of interesting ideas of what I could have done differently. But it's also reminded me of how fun this was. We'll get into some other stuff too, like the Players Lounge was really fun. This was just, again, out-of-game stuff this is just what made it look like a regular Discord. DM questions. This was a very interesting area. I loved this. We will definitely be going through these. I'll probably actually spend a lot of time on this next week because my players have such great questions. And this was also a way, once we go through all of like the Discord, this is also some great questions. Like, does the workshop require the use of dev time? And then I can actually describe what all that meant. And we can just go through and this will actually be really fun because I'll actually get to go through like a lot of like the way I DM and the way I think about things as a DM. Server suggestions. So we didn't really get very many, but we did approve a couple. Game chat was just, anytime we were gaming, this is where the game chat. So we'll go through this next week and show you like what gaming was like with this group. The arena, we'll talk about that. The dungeons, all of that other stuff. All of this is going to be really fun to go through. I'm really excited, but my food is finally here, so I'm going to call it. Cosmic, thank you so much for joining me today. Baba Kiss, I think you're gone, but thank you so much for joining us today earlier. If you liked this, just remember that all of my other past live streams are on YouTube Jeez, why don't I know my own YouTube, guys? Like, I am, like, one of the worst people to promote myself. Because I don't even know my own YouTube, even though I started on YouTube. MGS Live, guys. At Misfit Gamer Studios Live. You can see all of my previous Discord, or all of my previous live streams. Number 1 through 12 are up there. We've gone through a couple different topics, types of roleplay, mantles, our first one when we came over to Twitch, my thoughts on miniatures, how magic works. That's actually a really good one. I really did enjoy breaking down how magic works in my realm and just the different ways that I've done some custom things. So yeah, if you like it, go check me out on YouTube. All my videos are always there. Otherwise, I will be streaming Mondays and Thursdays. Start time is between 7 and 7:30, and then we go until the topic is done. Have a great rest of your week. I know most of us are probably going to just cruise through tomorrow, hopefully. Have a great weekend. And if I do not do a pop-up stream on Sunday, hopefully I will see you all on Monday. Cosmic, come back and talk to me and Kage about some more of your world and some more of those ideas, because you said that you create magical items. I want to hear more about it. Have a great rest of your night. Have a good weekend. Take care.